The fire crackled low, casting dancing shadows across the weathered canvas of Cole Mercer's tent. Outside, the African night pressed in with the weight of something alive, breathing, watching, waiting. Cole sat cross-legged on a worn blanket, cleaning a hunting rifle he rarely fired anymore. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from a life he'd tried to bury. He was 42 years old, though the harsh sun and harsher years had carved him into something that looked older, harder. His face was a map of violence, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, another along his jaw, skin weathered to leather by countless days under the merciless African sun. His eyes, though, held something different than the scars suggested. Where there should have been coldness, there was a weariness that came from seeing too much, doing too much, and carrying the weight of it all alone. 3 years. 3 years since he'd walked away from the hunting parties, the expeditions that paid in gold and blood. 3 years since he'd last fired a weapon at anything other than dinner. 3 years trying to prove to himself, and to a daughter who wouldn't return his letters, that he could be something other than a killer. The shot came without warning. The canvas beside his head exploded inward, the bullet passing so close he felt the heat of its trajectory. Cole's body reacted before his mind caught up, rolling sideways, extinguishing the lamp, rifle in hand despite having been disassembled seconds before. His fingers worked in the darkness, reassembling the weapon with the kind of speed that came from years of survival. "Don't shoot!" A woman's voice, sharp and commanding despite the breathlessness behind it. "Cole Mercer, don't shoot. I'm not here to kill you." Cole's finger hovered over the trigger, his body pressed against the far side of the tent, eyes adjusting to the darkness. Through the bullet hole, he could see the silhouette of someone running, no, stumbling, toward his camp. "Then you've got a damn strange way of introducing yourself," Cole called out, his voice gravelly from disuse. He didn't socialize much out here. The figure burst through the tent flap, and Cole's rifle snapped up, then froze. It was a woman, maybe 30, with wild dark hair tangled with leaves and dirt. Her clothes were torn, practical expedition gear that had seen hard use. Blood streaked her left arm, though whether it was hers or someone else's, Cole couldn't tell. But it was her eyes that stopped him from pulling the trigger. Fierce, intelligent, and filled with the kind of desperate determination he recognized from his own mirror. "They're right behind me," she gasped, not even flinching at the rifle pointed at her chest. "3 men, maybe 4. They've been tracking me for 2 days. "Not my problem." Cole didn't lower the weapon. "The hell it isn't." She moved deeper into the tent, and Cole noticed she was limping. "You're Cole Mercer." The Cole Mercer. Best tracker in East Africa, they say. The man who can find anything, survive anything, kill anything. "Used to be," Cole corrected. "Now I'm just a man who wants to be left alone." "Well, that's not an option tonight." The sound of horses reached them, riders moving fast through the scrub brush surrounding his camp. The woman turned to face the tent entrance, and Cole saw her hand move to a revolver at her hip. It was an old Webley, serviceable but not well maintained. She held it like someone who knew which end the bullets came out of but hadn't spent much time actually using it. "How many rounds you got in that?" Cole asked. 5. "Against 4 men? I'm a good shot." "You'd better be." Cole moved to the opposite side of the tent flap, rifle ready. "Who are you?" "Evelyn Cross." The name meant nothing to him. "Why are they after you?" "Long story." "Make it short." The riders were closer now. Cole could hear them calling to each other in Dutch-accented English. Mercenaries, probably. The frontier was full of them. Men who'd come to Africa looking for fortune and found only violence. "I have something they want," Evelyn said. "Something valuable." "Everyone out here has something valuable," Cole replied. "Gold, ivory, diamonds. Why should I care about yours?" "Because mine can buy you back into your daughter's life." Cole's finger tightened on the trigger, not at the riders outside, but in pure reflex at hearing someone mention Sarah. "How the hell do you know about my daughter?" "I know a lot about you, Mr. Mercer. I know you sent her 17 letters last year. I know she returned everyone unopened. I know you've been out here trying to become someone worthy of being called a father again." Evelyn's voice softened slightly. "I know you're running out of time." The riders burst into the clearing, their horses snorting and stamping. Through a gap in the canvas, Cole counted them. 4, as Evelyn had guessed. They wore a mixture of military surplus and expedition gear, well-armed, well-fed. Professional hunters, not random bandits. "Miss Cross," one of them called out, his voice carrying the clipped tones of Dutch South Africa. "We know you're in there. Come out peacefully, hand over the map, and we'll let you go. You have my word as a gentleman." "His word isn't worth shit," Evelyn whispered. "He killed my guide yesterday when the man tried to help me escape." Cole processed this. A map. Always a damn map in Africa. Maps to lost cities, lost tribes, lost treasures. Most of them were frauds drawn by con men who preyed on European fantasies about the Dark Continent. But the fact that these men were willing to kill for it suggested this one might be different. "What's the map lead to?" he asked. "Something that could change everything," Evelyn replied. "Something that powerful men would wage wars over." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm giving you until you agree to help me." The lead rider dismounted, his boots crunching on the dry earth. "Mr. Mercer, we know you're in there too. This doesn't concern you. Send out the woman, take a bag of gold for your trouble, and go back to your quiet life." Cole looked at Evelyn. In the dim light filtering through the tent canvas, he could see the cut of her jaw, the set of her shoulders. She wasn't begging, she wasn't pleading, she was waiting to see what kind of man he'd choose to be. "How much gold?" Cole called out. Evelyn's face hardened, disappointment flashing across her features. "£50, the rider replied. "Good English sovereigns." "Not enough." "75, then. That's generous for a night's inconvenience." Cole met Evelyn's eyes. "And if I tell you to go to hell?" The rider laughed. "Then we burn you out and take her anyway. But I'd rather not waste the time or ammunition." "What do you say, Mercer? Easy money for an easy choice." Cole's mind raced through the options. 4 armed men outside, 1 injured woman inside, and him, a man who'd sworn off killing 3 years ago. The smart play was obvious. Take the money, let her go, survive the night. Stay on the path to redemption. But redemption, he'd learned, wasn't about taking the easy path. It was about taking the right one, even when the cost was high. "Here's my counteroffer," Cole called out, his voice carrying the weight of decision. "You ride away now. Forget about the woman, and I forget I saw your faces." Silence. Then, "That's disappointing, Mr. Mercer. I'd hoped you'd be reasonable." "Reasonable left when you shot up my tent." "That was a warning shot." "Then let me give you one in return." Cole's rifle barked once, the muzzle flash lighting up the tent. Outside, one of the riders cursed as his horse screamed and bolted. Cole had shot close enough to spook the animal but not hit it. The message was clear. Next time he wouldn't miss. "Light the tent," the lead rider commanded. "Burn them out." "Go!" Cole shoved Evelyn toward the back of the tent, where his knife had already sliced through the canvas. "Run toward the rocks. Stay low." Evelyn didn't argue. She dove through the opening and Cole followed, grabbing his pack and ammunition in one smooth motion. Behind them, the tent erupted in flames as one of the riders tossed a torch onto the canvas. The African night swallowed them as they ran. They moved through the darkness like ghosts, Cole leading with the confidence of a man who knew this terrain intimately. Behind them, the riders shouted and organized, but they'd lost the element of surprise. Cole had spent 3 years learning every rock, every tree, every game trail in this region. It was his edge, and he used it ruthlessly. "There!" Evelyn pointed to a cluster of boulders rising from the scrubland like broken teeth. "Can we lose them in there?" "No," Cole replied, not slowing. "They'll trap us. Keep moving." They ran for another 20 minutes, Cole constantly checking their back trail, adjusting their path to avoid leaving obvious tracks. The moon was a thin sliver, offering barely enough light to navigate by. Evelyn stumbled twice, but each time she caught herself and pushed on without complaint. Finally, Cole led her into a dry riverbed, its banks high enough to provide cover. He motioned for silence and listened. The sounds of pursuit had faded, but that didn't mean they were safe. These men were professionals. They'd be spreading out, cutting off escape routes, waiting for dawn. "We need to talk," Evelyn said, keeping her voice low. "Later." "Now." She grabbed his arm, surprisingly strong for someone who'd just run for miles. "You need to know what you're getting into." Cole shook her off, moving farther down the riverbed until he found a spot where the bank had collapsed, creating a small overhang. "Get under there. Stay quiet. Don't move unless I say so." "Where are you going?" to make sure they don't find us before sunrise. He checked his rifle, counting rounds mentally. If I'm not back in an hour, head northeast. 3 miles that way, you'll hit a village called Kibwezi. Tell them Cole sent you. They'll hide you. And if they catch you. Cole met her eyes. Then you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help. Just run. That's the deal. Cole cut her off. You wanted my help. This is what my help looks like. Evelyn studied him for a long moment, then nodded. She crawled under the overhang, the Webley still in her hand. Cole noticed her checking the cylinder, counting her remaining rounds. 5 bullets against 4 men. Not good odds, but he'd worked with worse. He moved back down the riverbed, his boots making no sound on the sand. The tracker in him took over, the part of himself he'd tried to suppress. It rose now like an old friend, dangerous, capable, ruthless. He'd forgotten how natural it felt, how easily the skills came back. It scared him. The first rider appeared 15 minutes later, picking his way carefully along the riverbank, rifle at the ready. Cole watched from the shadows, measuring distances, calculating angles. The man was good, moving with caution, checking his corners. But he made one mistake. He passed too close to a stand of acacia trees where Cole had positioned himself. Cole's hand shot out, grabbing the man's rifle barrel and pulling hard. The rider stumbled forward, off balance, and Cole's elbow cracked into his temple. The man went down without a sound, unconscious but alive. 1 down, 3 to go. Cole took the man's rifle, a modern Mauser, better than his own aging weapon, and his ammunition. He also found a canteen, which he took, and a map, which he pocketed without looking at it. Then he dragged the unconscious rider into the bushes and tied him with his own belt. The second rider found his companion's horse 10 minutes later. Cole heard the man's curse, heard him whistle for the others. They'd be more cautious now, but they'd also be angry. Angry men made mistakes. Cole circled back toward the riverbed, moving parallel to it, staying in the shadows. He could see 2 of the remaining riders now, working together, checking hiding spots methodically. The lead man, the one who'd done the talking, was nowhere in sight. That worried Cole. The leader was the smart one, the dangerous one. He'd be thinking ahead, anticipating moves rather than reacting to them. A sound behind him, the soft scrape of boot on stone. Cole spun, bringing the Mauser up, but he was a fraction too slow. The lead rider stood 10 feet away, his own rifle already aimed at Cole's chest. "Foolish, Mr. Mercer," the man said. His face was weathered and scarred, eyes cold as African winter. "I expected better from the legendary Cole Mercer." "Legends are just stories people tell," Cole replied, not lowering his weapon. They stood in a stalemate, each with a clear shot at the other. "Question is, who shoots first?" "You're fast. I'll give you that. But I don't miss." "Neither do I." The rider smiled. "Then we have a problem." "We do." They stood there, frozen in the moment, each waiting for the other to blink. Cole's mind raced. He'd been in situations like this before, back when he was younger and stupider, back when he solved problems with bullets instead of thinking. But 3 years of trying to be better had taught him something. Violence was easy. It was walking away that took real strength. "You know what your problem is," the rider said. "You care about that woman. I can see it. And caring makes you weak." "And you don't care about anything," Cole replied. "Which makes you predictable." "How so?" "Because I knew you'd try to flank me. I knew you'd leave your men to search while you circled around. And I knew you'd be so focused on me that you wouldn't notice her." The rider's eyes widened slightly, just enough to tell Cole he'd guessed right. Behind the man, barely visible in the darkness, Evelyn emerged from the riverbed. She moved like a shadow, the Webley in her hand pointed at the rider's back. "Drop it," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The rider's smile never wavered. "You won't shoot me, Miss Cross. You're not a killer." "Maybe not," Evelyn agreed, "but I'm desperate. And desperate people do desperate things." For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then the rider slowly lowered his rifle, letting it hang from its strap. "Smart woman. I can respect that." "On your knees," Cole ordered, stepping forward. "Hands behind your head." The rider complied, moving with deliberate slowness. Cole kept his rifle trained on the man while Evelyn circled around to cover him from a different angle. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline catching up with her. "Your men will find us," the rider said calmly. They'll hear the shot if you kill me, and they'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." "Who said anything about killing you?" Cole replied. He pulled his belt free, using it to bind the rider's hands. "I'm done with killing." "Noble sentiment. Won't keep you alive out here." "It's kept me alive for 3 years." Cole gagged the man with his own scarf, then dragged him into the bushes near where he'd left the first rider. By the time the other two found them, Cole and Evelyn would be miles away. "Come on," he said to Evelyn. "We need to move. Now." They ran through the remainder of the night, putting as much distance between themselves and the riders as possible. Cole set a brutal pace, but Evelyn matched him step for step, never complaining despite the obvious pain in her leg. Dawn found them high in the rocky hills, looking down at the vast expanse of savanna below. Cole's camp was a smoldering ruin in the distance, everything he'd built over 3 years reduced to ash and memory. Evelyn sat on a boulder, checking her wounded arm. The blood had dried and the cut didn't look too deep. She cleaned it with water from the canteen Cole had taken, then bound it with a strip torn from her shirt. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not taking their offer." Cole didn't respond. He was scanning the horizon, looking for signs of pursuit. The riders would regroup, tend to their wounded, and come after them. Men like that didn't give up easily. "You want to know about the map?" Evelyn continued. "I want to know why 4 armed men are willing to kill for it," Cole replied. "There's a difference." Evelyn reached into her jacket and pulled out a leather case, worn and water-stained. She opened it carefully, revealing a map drawn on what looked like very old parchment. Even from a distance, Cole could see it was different from the usual treasure maps that circulated through Africa's trading posts. This one was detailed, precise, marked with coordinates and notations in multiple languages. "My father," Evelyn began, "was an archaeologist, a real one, not one of these treasure hunters who tear up historical sites looking for gold. He spent 20 years researching the old kingdoms of East Africa, the civilizations that existed before the Europeans came. And he found something, references in Portuguese trading records, oral histories from local tribes, astronomical calculations that matched up perfectly." She traced a line on the map. "There was a kingdom here, 400 years ago. They controlled the trade routes, the gold mines, everything. And they had something the European powers wanted desperately." "Let me guess," Cole said. "Treasure." "Not treasure, knowledge." Evelyn's eyes blazed with intensity. They had maps to every resource in the interior. Gold deposits, diamond fields, copper mines. Things the Europeans spent centuries trying to find. The kingdom used that knowledge as leverage, playing the Portuguese against the Dutch, the British against everyone. They were powerful because they knew where everything was. Cole was beginning to see where this was going. "And your father found their archive." "He found where it should be. But before he could mount an expedition, he was kidnapped. 3 weeks ago, in Mombasa. Men grabbed him off the street in broad daylight." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "They left a message. Said if I wanted to see him alive, I had to bring them this map." "So why didn't you?" "Because the men who took him aren't the only ones who want it. There are Dutch companies, British mining interests, even some German industrialists, everyone who stands to make a fortune if they can find these resources first. The men chasing us? They're working for one of those companies. My father's kidnappers are working for another." Cole sat down across from her, finally understanding the scope of what he'd walked into. "You're caught in the middle of a war over information." "A war that hasn't started yet," Evelyn corrected. "But it will. The moment anyone gets their hands on this map and confirms what my father found. Countries will send armies. Thousands will die fighting over gold and diamonds that most of them will never see. Then destroy it." "I can't." Evelyn's hand tightened on the map case. "Because the men holding my father will kill him if I don't deliver it. And because—" She hesitated. "Because somewhere in that archive, according to my father's notes, is information that could actually help people. Medical knowledge from indigenous healers, agricultural techniques, water sources that could support settlements, things that could save lives instead of taking them." Cole stood, walking to the edge of their vantage point. The sun was rising now, painting the savanna in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful and merciless, like everything else in Africa. "You want me to help you rescue your father?" he said. It wasn't a question. "I want you to guide me into the interior, to the location marked on this map. My father's kidnappers said they'd meet me there with him. It's their insurance. They get the map, verify it's real, then make the exchange. And you trust them to keep their word? No, but I trust you to make sure they do. Cole turned to face her. Why? You don't know me. I know you turned down 75 pounds in gold to help a stranger. I know you've spent 3 years trying to be a better man. I know you have a daughter who won't speak to you because of the things you did before. Evelyn stood, meeting his eyes. I know you need redemption as much as I need my father back. The words hit harder than Cole wanted to admit. He'd spent 3 years running from his past, thinking that distance and time could wash away the blood on his hands. But redemption, he was beginning to understand, didn't come from running away. It came from running towards something worth fighting for. Where's the meeting point? He asked. Evelyn showed him on the map. It was deep in the interior, past the frontier territories, into lands controlled by tribal kingdoms that didn't welcome outsiders. 2 months of hard travel, maybe more, through some of the most dangerous terrain in Africa. That's Maasai land, Cole said. They don't take kindly to foreigners. My father had contacts with them, traded fairly, learned their language, respected their customs. He thought they might have oral histories about the old kingdom. Past tense, he had contacts. That doesn't mean they'll help his daughter. Then we'll have to convince them. Cole studied the map more carefully. The route Evelyn's father had marked avoided the major settlements, sticking to game trails and dry riverbeds. Smart, if you didn't want to be followed. Deadly, if you didn't know what you were doing. We'll need supplies, he said. Food, water, ammunition, medicine. My camp is gone, so we'll have to hit a trading post. There's one in Kibwezi, Evelyn offered. Too close. Those riders will check there first. Cole thought for a moment. There's another post, 3 days east. Smaller, run by a man named Chen, who doesn't ask questions. We can resupply there, hire a porter or two if we're lucky. So you'll do it? Cole looked at her. This fierce, determined woman who'd run through the night with a bullet wound and never once asked him to slow down. She reminded him of Sarah, his daughter, not in appearance but in that same stubborn refusal to give up. I'll do it, he said. But on my terms. I lead, you follow. I say we go around trouble, we go around trouble. I say we run, we run. And if it comes down to choosing between the map and our lives, we burn the map. Agreed. And when this is over, when we've got your father back safe, you help me get a message to my daughter. A real message, one she'll actually read. Evelyn extended her hand. Deal. They shook, 2 desperate people making a pact in the African dawn. Behind them, the sun continued its relentless rise, indifferent to the struggles of those who walked beneath it. Cole gathered his gear, mentally cataloging what he had and what he'd need. The Mauser was good, but he'd want a backup weapon. They'd need water purification tablets, quinine for malaria, bandages, rope, a good knife, matches sealed in waterproof containers. The list was long and expensive. How much money do you have? He asked Evelyn. She pulled out a small purse. 50 English pounds. It's all I could grab before I ran. That'll get us started. We'll need more. How do we get more? Cole smiled grimly. Those riders who chased us? They had nice equipment. Expensive rifles, good horses. We left them tied up but alive, which means they're going to come after us again. And when they do, we're going to be ready. You want to ambush them? I want to discourage them. There's a difference. They spent the day resting and planning, taking turns sleeping while the other kept watch. Cole used the time to study Evelyn's map more carefully. Her father had been thorough. Every water source marked, every dangerous area noted, alternative routes sketched in. It was the work of someone who understood the land and respected it. As the sun began to set, Cole spotted movement on the plain below. 4 riders, moving carefully, tracking them. They'd found the trail despite Cole's best efforts to hide it. They're persistent, Evelyn observed. They're professionals, Cole corrected, which means they're also predictable. He explained his plan. It was risky, but it would send a message. The riders would reach the hills by nightfall, probably make camp, then come up in the morning. But there was a narrow pass they'd have to use, a choke point where 2 armed people could hold off a larger force. You ever fired that Webley at a moving target? Cole asked. A few times. Hit anything. Once. Well, tonight you're going to get more practice. As darkness fell, They positioned themselves on either side of the pass. Cole took the high ground with the Mauser, while Evelyn crouched behind rocks with the Webley and the riders' spare rifles. They'd gathered every loose stone they could find, piling them in strategic locations. The riders came just after midnight, as Cole predicted. They moved quietly, thinking they had the element of surprise. They were wrong. Cole's first shot wasn't aimed at them, it was aimed at the rock pile above them. The bullet struck exactly where he intended, triggering a small avalanche that blocked the pass behind them. The riders' horses panicked, screaming and rearing. Evelyn fired next, her shot going wide but close enough to make the riders dive for cover. They returned fire, but they were shooting at muzzle flashes in the dark, with no clear targets. "This is your only warning," Cole's voice echoed through the pass. "Leave now, or the next shots won't miss." "Mercer!" The lead rider, freed from his bond somehow, shouted back. "You're just delaying the inevitable. Give us the woman and the map." "Or what? You'll kill me? I've been dying slow for 3 years. Death doesn't scare me anymore." "Then what does?" Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. He fired 3 more shots, each one deliberately placed. One cut a rider's canteen loose, spilling precious water. Another shattered a rifle stock. The third sparked off rocks so close to the leader's head that the man ducked instinctively. Message delivered. "You can keep chasing us," Cole called out. "Keep losing equipment, keep losing men, keep wasting time. Or you can go back to whoever's paying you and tell them this map isn't worth what they think it is. You don't know what you're protecting." "I know it's none of my business, and I know you're not getting it through me." There was a long silence. Then finally, "This isn't over, Mercer." "It never is." The riders withdrew, leaving their blocked pass and their wounded pride. Cole and Evelyn waited another hour to make sure they were really gone, then slipped away into the night, heading east toward Chen's trading post. They walked through the remainder of the night, not speaking, both lost in their own thoughts. Cole kept replaying the gunfight in his mind, analyzing every shot, every decision. He'd fired to scare, not to kill, but the old instincts had been there. It would have been easy to put a bullet through the leader's chest to end the threat permanently. The fact that he'd chosen not to felt like a small victory. Dawn found them descending from the hills into flatter country. The land here was different, more trees, more water, more life. They saw herds of zebra in the distance, a few giraffe browsing acacia trees, Africa showing its gentler face. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said, breaking the long silence. "Depends on the question." "Why did you stop 3 years ago? Why did you walk away from hunting?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. They crested a small rise, and he paused to scan their surroundings before answering. "I killed a man," he finally said. "Not in self-defense, not in a fair fight. I killed him because I was paid to. He'd supposedly cheated a British trading company, stolen some ivory. They hired me to track him down and make an example." "And did you?" "I tracked him for 2 weeks, found him in a small village living with his family. His wife, his 3 daughters." Cole's voice went flat, empty. Turns out he hadn't stolen anything. He'd just witnessed something the company wanted hidden. Slaves, Evelyn. They were still running slaves, moving people like cargo, and this man had seen it. Evelyn stopped walking, her face pale. "I didn't kill him," Cole continued. "I let him go, told him to run, but the company sent others. And because I'd found him, because I'd shown them where he was, they found him too." He turned to face her. "I got paid anyway. Blood money for a man I didn't kill but died because of me." "The daughters?" "Orphaned. The company didn't care about witnesses who couldn't testify." Cole started walking again. "I sent the money to them, all of it. Set up an account through a missionary, made sure they'd be taken care of. Then I wrote to Sarah, my daughter, told her what I'd done and what I was going to do to make it right. She didn't forgive you." "Why should she? I'd been an absent father her whole life, always chasing the next job, the next adventure. Then when I finally reach out, it's to confess to being complicit in murder." He laughed bitterly. "Not exactly Father of the Year material." They walked in silence for a while. The sun climbed higher and the heat began to build. Cole led them to a small water source he knew, let them rest and refill their canteens. "My father," Evelyn said suddenly, "was gone a lot too. Chasing old civilizations, digging in the dirt for pottery shards and bones. I used to resent it, Used to think he loved dead kings more than his living daughter. What changed? I grew up. I realized he was trying to understand something bigger than himself, trying to prove that Africa had civilization and culture and knowledge before the Europeans came with their guns and their God and their certainty that they were saving savages. She looked at Cole. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying to do something good. And you think I am too? I think you're trying. That's more than most men can say. They reached Chen's trading post 3 days later, exhausted and filthy but alive. The post was exactly as Cole remembered it. A ramshackle collection of buildings surrounding a dusty courtyard, fortified against raiders but welcoming to anyone with coin. Chen himself came out to greet them, a small man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He was Chinese, had come to Africa 20 years ago and never left, building a reputation for fair dealing and tight lips. Cole Mercer, he said, his English accented but clear. Heard you were dead. Heard that myself. Seems we were both misinformed. Chen's eyes slid to Evelyn, assessing. And you've brought a guest. How unusual. We need supplies, food, ammunition, medical kit, and we need it quiet. Quiet costs extra. I'm aware. Cole pulled out Evelyn's purse. Will this cover it? Chen counted the money quickly. This will cover supplies. But if you want information too, you'll need more. What kind of information? The kind about the 4 armed men who came through here yesterday, asking about a woman matching your companion's description. The kind about the British mining concern that's put out a reward for information leading to the recovery of a stolen map. Chen smiled slightly. That kind of information. Cole and Evelyn exchanged glances. The situation was worse than they'd thought. It wasn't just one group after them. It was multiple interests, all converging. What did you tell them? Cole asked. Nothing. I don't see well, and my memory is poor. Costs a lot to improve both. Cole understood. How much to keep not seeing and not remembering? Another 50 pounds. That's extortion. That's business. Chen's expression didn't change. You're asking me to lie to dangerous men. That's worth money. Evelyn started to protest, but Cole held up a hand. He pulled out the spare ammunition he'd taken from the riders, along with one of their rifles. This Mauser's worth 30 pounds easy. The ammunition's another 10, and I'll throw in information that's worth the rest. What information? The riders who came through here? They're working for the de Klerk Mining Company out of Cape Town. They've got 8 more men coming up from Mombasa. Should be here in a week. If you want to protect your business, you'll want to know that. Chen considered this. How do you know this? I took it off their leader before I tied him up and left him in the bush. Cole pulled out a folded paper from his pocket, one of the documents he'd taken during the night ambush. Contract, signed by de Klerk himself. They're authorized to use any means necessary to recover the map. Chen took the paper, scanned it quickly. His expression shifted slightly. The closest thing to surprise Cole had ever seen on the man's face. Any means necessary, Chen repeated. That's troubling language. It gets worse. Look at the signature at the bottom. Chen's eyes widened. This is countersigned by a British Colonial Office representative. That means official sanction. Which means this isn't just a private company looking for treasure, Evelyn said, understanding dawning. It's a government operation. Government's protecting corporate interests, Chen corrected. Same as it ever was in Africa. He looked at Cole with new respect. This information is valuable. We have a deal. They spent the rest of the day gathering supplies and resting. Chen's trading post was neutral ground. No violence allowed, no questions asked. It was one of the few safe havens left in the region. That night, over a meal of rice and dried meat, Chen told them what else he'd heard. The interior is more dangerous than usual, he said. The Maasai are dealing with a drought, and it's made them hostile to outsiders. The British are planning a new railway, which has the local tribes worried about land seizures. And there are rumors of a German expedition that disappeared 3 months ago, heading toward the same area marked on your map. Disappeared how? Evelyn asked. No one knows. They had 50 men, modern equipment, everything they needed. They radioed their position regularly, then one day the transmission stopped. A search party found their base camp abandoned, equipment scattered, no bodies. Could have been lions, Cole suggested. Lions don't steal ammunition and radios. The implication hung in the air. Something in the interior was dangerous enough to wipe out a well-equipped expedition without leaving evidence. "Maybe we should reconsider this route," Evelyn said quietly. But Cole shook his head. "Every route into the interior is dangerous. At least this one has a purpose." Later, alone in the small room Chen had provided, Evelyn pulled out a photograph. It showed an older man with kind eyes and wild gray hair standing in front of ancient ruins. "My father," she said, handing it to Cole. "That was taken 2 years ago, at a dig site in Ethiopia. He was so happy that day. He'd found evidence of a pre-Christian civilization, proof that the narratives of Africa being uncivilized before Europeans arrived were lies." Cole studied the photo. The man looked like a scholar, not an adventurer. Soft hands, gentle face. The kind of person who belonged in a library, not fighting for his life in the African wilderness. "What if we're too late?" Evelyn asked, voicing the fear she'd been carrying. "What if they've already killed him?" "Then we make them pay," Cole replied simply. "But I don't think they have. Dead, he's worthless. Alive, he's leverage." "Leverage for what?" "That's what we're going to find out." The next morning, they left Chen's trading post before dawn, their packs heavy with supplies. Chen had thrown in a few extras, a good compass, a snakebite kit, and surprisingly, a small telescope. "For seeing what's coming before it sees you," Chen explained. "Survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the most aware." They headed northwest, following a route Cole knew that would take them into the interior while avoiding the major settlements. The land changed as they traveled, from savanna to scrubland, from scrubland to sparse forest. They saw signs of drought everywhere, dried water holes, dying vegetation, carcasses of animals that hadn't survived. On the 4th day out from Chen's, they encountered their first real obstacle, a village burned to the ground. Cole approached carefully, rifle ready, but it was clear there were no survivors. The buildings were still smoking, the destruction recent. Bodies lay in the street, but not many. Most of the villagers had apparently fled. "What happened here?" Evelyn asked, her voice shaken. Cole examined the evidence. Bullet casings, boot prints, the pattern of the destruction. "Raid, professional, military style. They came at dawn, hit fast, grabbed what they wanted, and left." "Looking for what?" "Information, probably. Or maybe just clearing obstacles." He pointed to marks in the dirt. "They took prisoners. See these drag marks? 5, maybe 6 people, pulled toward those tracks. They followed the tracks to the edge of the village, where they found tire marks from heavy vehicles." "German," Evelyn suggested. "British, actually. These are from Morris trucks, standard colonial military issue." Cole straightened. "This wasn't done by treasure hunters. This was done by soldiers." The implications were chilling. Governments were involved now, using military resources to secure whatever was marked on Evelyn's map. The stakes had just gotten exponentially higher. "We should turn back," Evelyn said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "You want to abandon your father?" "I want to keep us from ending up like this village." Cole understood the fear, but he also understood something else. They'd passed the point of no return. Too many people knew they had the map now. Turning back wouldn't make them safer. It would just make them targets without purpose. "Listen to me," he said, gripping her shoulders. "This is only going to get worse, more dangerous, more deadly. If you want out, this is your chance. I'll take the map, lead them away from you, give you time to disappear." Evelyn met his eyes. "And what about my father?" "I'll do my best to get him out, but I can't promise anything." She was quiet for a long moment, looking at the destroyed village, at the evidence of violence and death. Then she straightened her shoulders, and Cole saw the steel beneath her fear. "No," she said. "We do this together. That was the deal." Cole nodded, respecting her courage even as he feared for her life. "Then we move fast and stay smart. From here on, we assume we're being tracked. We leave no traces, we trust no one, and we don't stop until we reach the meeting point." "How far?" Cole checked the map, calculating distances and terrain. 6 weeks if we push hard, 8 if we're careful. Then we push hard. They left the village behind, moving into territory that was increasingly wild and dangerous. The land seemed to resist them, Dry riverbeds where there should have been water, impassable thorn thickets blocking easy routes, storms that came out of nowhere and turned the ground to mud. But they pushed on day after brutal day, and slowly the frontier gave way to something deeper, older, more primal. They were entering lands where few Europeans had ever traveled, where the old ways still held sway. It was here, in this wild heart of Africa, that Cole began to understand what they were really searching for. Not treasure, not wealth, but something far more dangerous. The truth. The Maasai warrior appeared without warning, materializing from the tall grass like a spirit made flesh. One moment Cole and Evelyn were alone on the dusty trail. The next they were surrounded by 6 men carrying spears, their bodies painted with red ochre, their faces unreadable. Cole's hand moved toward his rifle, but stopped. These weren't raiders or soldiers. These were the land's true guardians, and threatening them would be suicide. "Don't move," he whispered to Evelyn. "Let me handle this." The tallest warrior stepped forward, his spear point resting casually near Cole's throat. He spoke in Maa, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Cole caught only fragments, words about trespass, about disrespect, about consequences. "I don't speak your language well," Cole replied in halting Maa, dredging up vocabulary from years ago. "We seek passage. We mean no harm." The warrior's eyes narrowed. He switched to Swahili, which Cole understood better. "You are the hunter who walks away from blood. We have heard of you." That caught Cole off guard. "You know me?" "The land knows all who walk upon it. You are Cole Mercer, who stopped killing 3 seasons ago, who lives alone and bothers no one." The warrior's gaze shifted to Evelyn. "But now you bring a white woman into our territory during the dry season, when our cattle are dying and our patience is thin. Why?" Evelyn started to speak, but Cole raised a hand, stopping her. He'd dealt with the Maasai before, back when he was leading hunting parties. He knew their protocols, their sense of honor. "Her father is taken," Cole said simply. "We go to bring him home." "Many fathers are taken in these lands. Many sons, many daughters. Why should we care about yours?" This question was directed at Evelyn. She stepped forward, ignoring the spear points that shifted to track her movement, and pulled out the photograph of her father. "Because my father respected your people. He is Dr. William Cross. He came to your villages 3 years ago, traded fairly, learned your stories. He treated your sick when the fever came through. Do you remember him?" The warriors conferred among themselves in rapid Maa. Finally, the leader nodded slowly. "We remember the gentle scholar who asked permission before digging in the old places, who paid in medicine and cloth, not beads and empty promises." He looked at Evelyn with something approaching respect. "You have his eyes? Then you'll let us pass." "Pass to where?" "The interior is closed. The drought has made the animals desperate, and desperate animals are dangerous. Even more dangerous are the white men with their machines and their guns, tearing up the earth looking for things that should remain hidden." Cole's instincts sharpened. What white men? Soldiers. They came 2 moons ago with trucks and digging equipment. They go to the old places, the forbidden places. They ask questions about ancient kingdoms, about treasure. The warrior spat in the dust. They burn villages that do not answer. They take people who resist. What? The burned village they'd found. It was part of a pattern, a systematic campaign to locate something the map pointed toward. "Did they find what they were looking for?" Evelyn asked. "They found only death. The old places protect themselves. 20 men went into the sacred caves. Only 5 came out, and those 5 had madness in their eyes." The warrior's expression was grim. Now they gather more soldiers, more equipment. They will try again, and more will die. And the land will drink their blood, as it has drunk the blood of all who seek to violate it. Cole processed this information. A military expedition, government-backed, willing to burn villages and kill civilians. And they'd already lost men to whatever was in those caves. The situation was even worse than he'd imagined. "We're not here for treasure," he told the warrior. "We're here for one man. Help us reach him, and we'll leave your lands in peace." Peace. The warrior laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There is no peace here anymore. The white men have broken it with their greed." He studied them both for a long moment, then came to some internal decision. "But the scholar showed us respect when others did not. For his sake, I will offer you a choice." "What choice?" "Turn back now, and we will escort you safely to the border. Go forward, and you are on your own. We will not help you, but we will not hinder you. Either way, you leave our lands by the next full moon, or you become enemies." Cole looked at Evelyn. This was her father, her mission. The choice had to be hers. She didn't hesitate. "We go forward." The warrior nodded as if he'd expected this answer. "Then I give you one gift for the scholar's daughter." He reached into a leather pouch and pulled out a small carved stone, no bigger than a thumb. Strange symbols covered its surface. "This is from the old kingdom you seek. Your father found it near the sacred caves and gave it to our elders, asking what it meant. We did not know, but we recognized it as a thing of power." Evelyn took the stone carefully. "What kind of power?" "The kind that makes men mad with wanting, the kind that brings only sorrow." The warrior stepped back. "Go now. Follow the dry riverbed northwest for 3 days. You will find a place where 3 hills meet like the points of a spear. Beyond that is the territory of the old kingdom. Beyond that," he paused, "is not our concern." The warriors melted back into the grass as suddenly as they'd appeared, leaving Cole and Evelyn alone with their rapidly beating hearts and the weight of new knowledge. "That wasn't encouraging," Evelyn said, turning the carved stone over in her palm. "Nothing about this has been encouraging," Cole replied, "but at least we know what we're walking into now. A place dangerous enough to drive trained soldiers mad? Every place out here is dangerous. The question is whether the danger is natural or something else." They followed the dry riverbed as instructed, their pace quick despite the brutal heat. The land around them grew stranger with each passing mile. Rock formations that seemed too precisely shaped to be natural, patterns in the earth that suggested ancient irrigation systems, the occasional glimpse of worked stone half buried in the dirt. On the second day, they found evidence of the military expedition. An abandoned camp, hastily evacuated, equipment scattered. Cole examined the scene with growing unease. "They left in a hurry," he said, pointing to supplies still in their crates, tents half collapsed. "And they left at night." "How can you tell?" "Look at the fire pit. They doused it with water, but some of the wood is only partially burned. If they'd been packing up during the day, they would have let it burn out naturally." He moved to the perimeter. "And see these footprints? They're deep, pressed hard into the ground. They were running." Evelyn examined a discarded journal lying open in the dirt. The pages were water damaged, but some entries were still legible. She read aloud. "Day 14. Found the entrance to the underground chamber. Captain Reynolds insists we proceed despite the warnings from the local guides. 3 men refuse to enter and are being held under guard." She flipped forward. The handwriting became more erratic. "Day 17. Something is wrong. Jenkins came out screaming about voices in the walls. Henderson won't stop laughing. The captain shot him to make him stop, but he kept laughing even after he was dead." Cole moved closer, reading over her shoulder. The final entry was barely legible, written in what looked like blood. "They're not dead. The old kings. They're still here, still watching, still waiting. We shouldn't have—" The entry ended mid-sentence. "Madness," Cole said flatly. "Exposure, dehydration, maybe some kind of gas in the caves. Underground chambers can build up carbon dioxide, make people hallucinate." "You don't believe that." "I believe in what I can see and touch. Everything else is just stories." But even as he said it, Cole felt the weight of the place pressing down on him. There was something wrong here, something that made his instincts scream warnings. He'd spent 3 years learning to listen to those instincts. They moved on quickly, neither wanting to spend more time in the abandoned camp than necessary. The 3 hills appeared on the 3rd day, exactly as the Maasai warrior had described. Beyond them, the land changed dramatically. The drought seemed to end at an invisible line. On one side, dry scrubland. On the other, lush vegetation fed by underground springs. Trees grew thick and tall, their canopy blocking out much of the sun. The air felt different, cooler, heavier, charged with something Cole couldn't name. "This is it," Evelyn said, checking her father's map. According to his notes, the meeting point is 2 days ahead, in a valley between rock formations he called the Pillars of Kings. Descriptive name. "My father was a romantic." She smiled sadly. "He used to read me stories when I was little, tales of lost civilizations. hidden treasures, brave explorers. I thought they were just fairy tales. Maybe they were. Or maybe he was trying to prepare me, to show me that the world was bigger and stranger than the British Empire wanted people to believe. Evelyn looked at the carved stone the warrior had given her. He spent his whole life proving that Africa had history and culture that predated colonization, that there were kingdoms here that rivaled anything in Europe, and got himself kidnapped for it, because what he found threatens people who profit from believing Africans are primitive and need to be civilized by force. Her voice carried an edge of anger. If there's proof of advanced civilizations, of sophisticated trade networks and astronomical knowledge and medical understanding, then the whole justification for colonial exploitation falls apart. Cole had never thought about it in those terms. To him, Africa had always just been Africa, beautiful and brutal, giving and taking in equal measure. But he was beginning to understand that Evelyn and her father were fighting a different kind of battle, one where knowledge was the weapon and truth was the prize. They made camp that night in a clearing by one of the springs. For the first time in weeks, they had enough water to properly wash. Evelyn tended to her arm wound, which had healed into an angry red scar. Cole cleaned and oiled their weapons, checked their ammunition count. "We're running low," he said. "Maybe 40 rounds left for the Mauser, 12 for your Webley." "Will that be enough?" "Depends on how many people we have to shoot." Optimist. Realist. Cole set the rifle aside. "Tomorrow we need to start thinking tactically. The meeting point is going to be watched, probably from multiple angles. Your father's kidnappers will be there, but so might the soldiers, the Dutch mercenaries, maybe others we don't even know about. So what's the plan?" "We scout it first. Find the high ground, identify all the players, figure out who's who. Then we wait for the right moment to make our move. And if there is no right moment," Cole met her eyes, "then we make one." The next morning brought them to the edge of the valley. The Pillars of Kings were exactly as Evelyn's father had described, massive stone columns, naturally formed but shaped by erosion into something that looked deliberately architectural. They rose from the valley floor like the remains of some ancient temple, casting long shadows in the early light. Cole used Chen's telescope to survey the valley. What he saw made his blood run cold. "We've got company," he said, handing the telescope to Evelyn. "Southwest corner, near the largest pillar." Evelyn looked. A camp, well organized, with at least a dozen tents and what looked like heavy equipment under tarps. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. These weren't mercenaries or treasure hunters. These were professional soldiers. British, Cole identified from their uniforms. Regular army, not colonial militia. Someone's taking this very seriously. "Do you see my father?" Cole took the telescope back, scanning the camp more carefully. There, a smaller tent, set apart from the others, with 2 guards posted outside. Through the tent's open flap, he could make out a figure sitting at a table, writing or drawing something. Maybe. There's someone in the isolated tent. Could be a prisoner, could be a specialist they brought in. Can't tell from here. They spent the rest of the day observing, mapping the camp's routine, counting guards, identifying weaknesses. As the sun began to set, new players arrived. 3 vehicles rumbled into the valley from the east, kicking up dust. They parked near the British camp but remained separate. Men emerged, hard-faced, heavily armed, speaking what sounded like Dutch and German. "The de Klerk mercenaries," Evelyn whispered. "They must have tracked us here." But that wasn't all. An hour before dark, a third group appeared on foot, local men, tribal warriors, but not Maasai. They were led by a white man in explorer's gear who seemed to know the area well. This group set up their own camp on the opposite side of the valley, pointedly ignoring the others. 3 separate groups, Cole counted. 3 separate agendas. This is going to get complicated. Which one has my father? I'm guessing the British. That isolated tent, the way it's guarded, they're protecting someone valuable. Cole lowered the telescope. But here's the question. Are they protecting him from the others, or are they using him as bait? Bait for what? For whoever shows up with the map, which would be us. The implication hung between them. They'd walked into a trap, or at least a powder keg, waiting for a spark. Every group down there wanted what Evelyn carried, and they were all armed and willing to kill for it. "We need a different approach," Cole said. "Going in directly would be suicide." "So what do we do?" Cole thought for a long moment, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, he smiled, a hard, dangerous expression Evelyn hadn't seen before. "We do what they're not expecting," he said. "We talk to them." "You want to negotiate?" "I want to understand what they want, because right now they all think the map is the prize. But what if we convince them it's worthless without the person who can read it?" "My father." "Exactly. Right now he's a hostage. But if we can make them see him as essential, as the only one who can actually locate what they're looking for, then his value increases. They'll be less likely to kill him, and more likely to torture him for information. Which is why we don't give them time." Cole began sketching in the dirt, mapping out his plan. "We wait until tomorrow evening, when they're all tired from waiting, when their guard is down. Then you walk into the British camp, alone, carrying the map." "Alone? That's insane." "That's the point. You being alone shows you're not a threat. You being willing to trade shows you're reasonable. And you being the scholar's daughter means they'll want to hear what you have to say." "And where will you be?" "Making sure they don't try anything stupid." Cole pointed to positions on his crude map. "I'll be here, with a clear line of sight to that isolated tent. If things go wrong, if they try to take you prisoner or hurt your father, I'll create enough chaos for you both to escape." "By yourself? Against all those soldiers?" "I've worked with worse odds." Evelyn studied him, this hard man who'd chosen to help her despite every rational reason not to. "Why are you really doing this, Cole? And don't tell me it's about redemption." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You know what I realized," he finally said. "Redemption isn't something you earn by running away from your past. It's something you claim by running toward your future, even when that future scares you." He met her eyes. "Sarah, my daughter, she's 17 now. In another year, she'll be an adult, making her own choices about who to let into her life. If I want any chance of being one of those people, I need to show her I'm capable of doing the right thing, even when it's hard." "By risking your life for strangers?" "By proving I'm not the man I used to be." They spent the night preparing. Cole moved to a position overlooking the valley, finding a spot in the rocks where he could see everything but remain hidden. Evelyn waited until the sun was low, painting everything in shades of gold and red, then began her descent into the valley. Cole watched through the telescope, his finger resting lightly on the Mauser's trigger. He saw Evelyn approach the British camp, saw the guards raise their rifles, saw her hold up her hands in a gesture of peace. Words were exchanged, too far away to hear. Then an officer emerged from the command tent, his posture radiating authority. Colonel James Ashford. Cole recognized him from reputation, a career soldier, ruthless but honorable in his own way, known for getting results regardless of cost. If he was here, this operation had the full backing of the British government. Ashford and Evelyn spoke for several minutes. Cole saw her show him the map, saw the colonel's eyes widen with interest. Then Ashford gestured toward the isolated tent, and Evelyn was escorted there by 2 guards. The tent flap opened. A man emerged, blinking in the late afternoon light, older, gray-haired, wearing clothes that had once been fine but were now dirty and torn. Even from this distance, Cole could see the resemblance. William Cross, Evelyn's father. The reunion was brief but emotional. Evelyn embraced her father, and Cole saw the old man's shoulders shake with what might have been tears. Then Ashford intervened, speaking sharply, gesturing back toward the command tent. This was the delicate part. Cole kept his rifle trained on Ashford, ready to fire if the colonel made any threatening moves. But Ashford seemed content to talk, to negotiate. He led both Crosses back to the command tent, leaving the guards outside. Cole waited. Minutes stretched into an hour. The sun touched the horizon, and shadows grew long across the valley. The other camps were stirring now, their sentries noticing the activity in the British camp, curiosity turning to suspicion. Then the shooting started. It came from the east, rapid rifle fire tearing through the twilight. The de Klerk mercenaries were attacking the British camp, using the distraction of Evelyn's arrival to make their move. Bullets tore through tents, soldiers scrambled for weapons, chaos erupted. Cole cursed. This was exactly what he'd hoped to avoid. He tracked the mercenaries through his scope, counting at least 8 of them, well-armed and coordinated. They weren't trying to kill everyone. They were trying to reach the command tent, to seize the map while the British were disorganized. The third group joined the fray from the opposite side. The white explorer and his tribal warriors charged into the camp, adding to the confusion. It was a three-way battle now, everyone fighting everyone, and in the middle of it were Evelyn and her father. Cole made his decision. He couldn't reach them from here, couldn't protect them from this distance. He had to go down there, into the chaos, and extract them before they were killed in the crossfire. He moved fast, abandoning his position, sliding down the rocky slope with controlled recklessness. Bullets whined overhead as he reached the valley floor, the noise of battle overwhelming. A mercenary spotted him, raised his rifle, but Cole was faster. One shot, center mass, and the man went down. The old instincts flooded back, the ones Cole had tried so hard to suppress. Combat awareness, threat assessment, controlled aggression. He moved through the camp like a ghost, using the smoke and confusion as cover, taking down anyone who got in his way. He reached the command tent just as it exploded. The blast knocked him flat, ears ringing, vision blurred. Someone had thrown a grenade or set charges. Cole couldn't tell which. He staggered to his feet, searching desperately through the smoke and flames. "Evelyn!" he shouted. "William!" A hand grabbed his arm. He spun, rifle up, then lowered it. Evelyn, covered in dust and blood, but alive. Behind her, leaning heavily on her shoulder, was her father. "We need to go!" she shouted over the chaos. "Now!" Cole didn't argue. He took William's other arm, and together they ran toward the edge of the valley. Behind them, the battle raged on, all three factions too focused on each other to pursue immediately. They made it to the rocks before the first bullets found them. Cole returned fire, covering their escape while Evelyn helped her father climb. The old scholar was injured. Cole could see blood soaking through his shirt, but he was conscious and moving. "The map," William gasped. "Did you bring—" "I have it, Father," Evelyn assured him. "But we need to move. Can you make it?" "I'll make it. I've survived worse than a bullet wound." They climbed higher, putting distance between themselves and the valley. Behind them, the sound of battle began to fade, replaced by shouted orders and the crackle of flames. Someone would organize a pursuit soon, but for now, they had a lead. Cole led them to a narrow canyon he'd spotted during his reconnaissance, a defensible position where they could rest and regroup. He helped William sit down, then examined the wound. The bullet had gone through his side, missing anything vital, but the scholar had lost blood and needed medical attention. "I can stitch it," Evelyn said, pulling out their medical kit. "I've done field medicine before." While she worked on her father, Cole kept watch, his mind racing through possibilities. The valley was compromised now. All three groups knew they were here, knew they had the map. There would be no negotiation, no peaceful resolution. This was going to end in blood. "I'm sorry," William said, his voice weak but steady. "I never meant for it to come to this." "It's not your fault, Father." "Isn't it? I found something I shouldn't have, opened doors that should have stayed closed." He looked at Cole. "Thank you for protecting my daughter." "Thank your daughter," Cole replied. "She's the one who tracked me down, convinced me to help. I'm just the guide." "You're more than that." William winced as Evelyn sutured his wound. "I know who you are, Mr. Mercer. I know your reputation. The fact that you walked away from that life, that you chose to help us instead of turning us in for the reward, that speaks to character." "Or stupidity." William smiled despite the pain. "Often the same thing." His expression grew serious. "But you need to know what you're protecting. That map, it's not just showing treasure locations. It's showing something far more dangerous." "What?" Evelyn asked. "Knowledge. Specifically, knowledge of a metallurgical process that was lost when the Old Kingdom fell. They could create a type of steel that was stronger and lighter than anything the Portuguese or Dutch had. Weapons made from it were legendary, swords that could cut through European armor, spear points that never dulled." Cole felt a chill. "And the British want to rediscover this process. Not just the British, everyone. Imagine an army equipped with superior weapons, armor that could withstand modern bullets. The military advantage would be overwhelming." William's eyes were haunted. "That's why I hid. That's why I let them take me instead of the map. Because I knew what would happen if anyone actually found the archive." "They'd weaponize it," Evelyn said softly. "They'd start a war. Multiple wars. Every colonial power scrambling to control the technology, to equip their armies with it. And Africa would be the battlefield where millions died for metal forged centuries ago. The three of them sat in silence, the weight of this knowledge pressing down like the African sky. Cole understood now why so many men had died chasing this map, why governments had gotten involved. This wasn't about wealth. It was about power, on a scale that could reshape the world. So we destroy it, he said. The map, the knowledge, everything. We can't, William replied. Not yet, because the soldiers, they didn't just take me. They took my research assistant, a young man named David Omondi. He's still being held in another location, insurance to make sure I cooperated. If we destroy the map without securing his release, they'll kill him. Where is he? I don't know exactly. Somewhere near the archive itself. Ashford told me they'd found the entrance to the underground chambers, but they needed my expertise to navigate the traps and decode the warnings. If I cooperated, if I helped them access the metallurgical secrets, they'd release both David and my daughter. But you didn't cooperate. How could I? Give them the means to start wars that would kill thousands. William shook his head. I stalled, gave them partial information, led them down false paths. It's why they kept me alive this long. I was more valuable as a guide than a corpse. Evelyn finished stitching and bound the wound with clean bandages. So now what? We have the map, we have you, but they have David, and all three groups in that valley are going to come after us. Cole thought about it, piecing together a plan from the fragments of information they had. How far is the archive from here? 2 days, maybe 3, William said. It's hidden in a cave system beneath the Old Kingdom's capital. Most of the surface structures have eroded away, but the underground chambers are intact. And David is being held there? That's what Ashford implied. They have a garrison at the entrance, waiting for me to arrive and help them bypass the defenses. Then that's where we go, Cole decided. We get David out, and then we collapse the entire cave system. Bury the archive so deep nobody can ever find it. That's suicide, Evelyn protested. There could be 100 soldiers there. Probably less. Ashford had most of his force here in the valley. The garrison would be a skeleton crew, enough to guard the entrance but not assault it. Cole checked his ammunition again. Still too low for comfort. Besides, they're expecting William to arrive cooperatively. With the map, they won't be ready for an attack. You're talking about taking on a fortified position with 3 people, one of whom is injured. You have a better idea? Evelyn didn't. None of them did. The path forward was clear, even if it led through fire. They rested for a few hours, taking turns sleeping while one kept watch. Cole noticed Evelyn sitting with her father, speaking in low voices, making up for lost time. William told her about his captivity, about the things he'd learned about the Old Kingdom, about the wonders and horrors hidden beneath the earth. And Evelyn told him about their journey, about Cole's reluctant heroism, about the burned villages and the mad soldiers and the Maasai warriors who'd let them pass. Father and daughter reunited in the worst possible circumstances, sharing stories like they had all the time in the world. Cole envied them that. He thought about Sarah, about the conversations they'd never had, the time he'd wasted chasing money and adventure instead of being present. If he survived this, if he made it back, he'd find her. He'd make her listen, even if she didn't want to hear it. But first they had to survive. Dawn came cold and gray, the sun struggling to burn through low clouds. They gathered their gear, checked their weapons, and began the journey toward the archive. William insisted he could walk despite his injury, and indeed he kept pace better than Cole expected. The Old Kingdom, William explained as they traveled, was called Msika wa Mawe, the Foundation of Stones. It lasted nearly 300 years, controlling trade routes from the coast to the interior lakes. Their power came not from military conquest, but from knowledge. They knew where everything was, every mine, every water source, every navigable pass. They traded that information carefully, playing rival powers against each other. What happened to them? Cole asked. Internal collapse. A succession crisis led to civil war, which led to the capital being abandoned. The survivors scattered, taking their knowledge with them. Some joined the Maasai, others the coastal Swahili. The kingdom's location was forgotten, became legend. William's eyes grew distant. Until I found references in Portuguese archives, a trader's journal describing a city of stone where the inhabitants knew the stars and could work metal like magic. They reached the edge of the old capital by midday. It was almost invisible, Stone walls covered in centuries of vegetation, buildings reclaimed by forest. But once Cole knew what to look for, he could see the patterns. Streets laid out in geometric precision, structures oriented to celestial alignments, evidence of sophisticated urban planning. The entrance to the archive is there, William pointed to what looked like a natural cave opening in a rocky hillside. But it's not natural. The whole thing was excavated and shaped, then disguised to look like a geological formation. Through the telescope, Cole could see the British garrison. 20 men, maybe 25, with several tents and a heavy machine gun emplacement. They'd fortified the entrance with sandbags and barbed wire, turning it into a miniature fortress. "That's more than I expected," he admitted. "They're expecting trouble. Ashford's not stupid. He knows others are looking for the archive." William studied the defensive positions. "But they're also expecting me to arrive peacefully. That's our advantage." Cole formulated a plan. It was risky, relied on timing and luck, but it was better than nothing. We wait until dusk. Evelyn and William approach under a white flag, claiming they've come to negotiate William's full cooperation. That gets you inside, close to where David's being held. "And you?" "I create a distraction, something big enough to pull most of the guards away from the entrance, give you time to find David and get out." "What kind of distraction?" Cole smiled grimly. "The explosive kind." They spent the afternoon preparing. Cole scouted the perimeter, identifying weak points, guard rotations, supply caches. He found what he was looking for: fuel drums for the garrison's generators, stacked carelessly near the ammunition supplies. One well-placed shot would create a spectacular explosion. As the sun began to set, they put the plan into motion. Evelyn and William walked openly toward the garrison, hands raised, calling out that they'd come to talk. The guards scrambled, officers were summoned, exactly as Cole predicted. He watched from concealment as they were escorted inside, past the defenses into the cave entrance. Now came the hard part, waiting for exactly the right moment. Inside the garrison, Evelyn kept her nerve despite the rifles pointed at her. The officer in charge, a captain named Morrison, looked skeptical, but intrigued. "Dr. Cross," he said, "we'd heard you escaped in the chaos. Colonel Ashford will be pleased you've reconsidered cooperation." "I haven't reconsidered anything," William replied firmly. "But I have a proposition. Release David Omondi, let my daughter leave safely, and I'll help you navigate the archive." "You're not in a position to make demands." "Actually, I am, because without me, you'll never get past the first chamber." The Old Kingdom protected their knowledge with traps that have killed every explorer who tried to bypass them. "You've already lost 20 men to the archive. How many more are you willing to sacrifice?" Morrison's face tightened. William had guessed right. They'd suffered casualties trying to force their way in. "Even if I agreed," Morrison said, "the colonel would never approve releasing your assistant. He's leverage." "Then we have a problem." Outside, Cole lined up his shot. The fuel drums were 200 yards away, an easy shot with the Mauser. He could see guards patrolling, oblivious to the danger. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then everything went wrong. Gunfire erupted from the forest, not from Cole's position, but from the opposite side. The de Klerk mercenaries, having tracked them from the valley, launched their own assault on the garrison. Bullets tore through the camp, soldiers scrambled for weapons, and Cole's careful plan evaporated in seconds. He fired anyway, hitting the fuel drums dead center. The explosion was massive, a fireball that rose into the darkening sky, turning dusk into artificial day. The shockwave knocked guards off their feet, set tents ablaze, created exactly the chaos Cole had intended. But now he was pinned down by crossfire between the mercenaries and the British. He couldn't reach the cave entrance, couldn't provide cover for Evelyn and William's escape. Inside, Morrison grabbed William roughly. "You planned this." "I swear, I didn't." Another explosion cut him off. The mercenaries had brought explosives, were systematically destroying the British fortifications. This wasn't a raid for the map anymore. This was total war. Evelyn saw their chance. While Morrison was distracted by the chaos outside, she pulled her Webley and pressed it against his spine. "Where is David Omondi?" "I'll never—" She cocked the hammer. "You have 3 seconds." "Deeper in. 3rd chamber on the left. There's a guard." Evelyn hit him with the gun butt, not hard enough to kill, but enough to drop him unconscious. "Come on, father." They ran deeper into the cave, following Morrison's directions. The tunnels were exactly as William had described, worked stone, ancient but precisely cut, covered in warnings and symbols that glowed faintly in the reflected firelight from outside. Here, William pointed to a chamber sealed with a modern padlock, incongruous against the ancient stone. He shot the lock off with a pistol taken from Morrison, and the door swung open. Inside, a young African man looked up in shock. David Omondi, thin and exhausted but alive. "Dr. Cross? Miss Evelyn?" "How? No time," Evelyn cut him off. "We need to move. Now." Outside, Cole fought his way toward the cave entrance through a battlefield. The mercenaries had numerical superiority, but the British had better positions. The fight was brutal, close quarters, the kind of violence Cole had tried to leave behind. But he was good at it. That was the horrible truth. For all his efforts to be something else, he was very, very good at killing. He reached the entrance just as Evelyn, William, and David emerged from the depths. "Go!" he shouted, laying down covering fire. "Back toward the forest!" They ran, bullets kicking up dirt at their heels. Cole followed, firing periodically to keep the pursuit back. They made it to the tree line as full darkness fell, the burning garrison lighting the night behind them like a dying star. They didn't stop running until they'd put miles between themselves and the battle. Finally, in a dense part of the forest, they collapsed, gasping for breath, alive against all odds. "Everyone okay?" Cole asked. "Define okay," David replied, but he was smiling. "I'm free. That's better than I've been in weeks." William examined his daughter with a father's concern. "You're hurt." "Just scrapes." Evelyn showed him minor cuts and bruises. "Nothing serious?" They sat in the darkness, listening to the distant sounds of battle fading. Eventually, even those stopped. The garrison had either been overrun or the mercenaries had withdrawn. Either way, it was over. "Now what?" David asked the question they were all thinking. Cole looked at William. "You said we could collapse the cave system. How?" "There's a central support column in the main archive chamber. The whole structure was built around it deliberately. Remove the column, and the ceiling comes down, bringing half the hillside with it. But to reach it, we'd have to go deep, past all the traps, through chambers designed to kill intruders. Can you guide us?" "Theoretically, I've studied the layout from the few records that survived. But it's dangerous, Cole. These weren't simple pit traps. The Old Kingdom used sophisticated mechanisms, some of them still functional after 4 centuries. More dangerous than leaving that archive intact?" William conceded the point. "No, nothing's more dangerous than that." So it was decided. They would rest tonight, gather their strength, and tomorrow they would descend into the ancient archive one final time, not to claim its treasures, but to destroy them forever. Above them, the African stars wheeled in their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas playing out below. The frontier was proving once again that it had no interest in making anything easy. But for the first time in 3 years, Cole felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Dawn broke over the forest with an oppressive weight, the air thick with smoke from the still-burning garrison. Cole hadn't slept. He'd spent the night on watch, listening to the sounds of men searching the darkness, calling to each other in Dutch and English, hunting for the fugitives who'd slipped through their fingers. Twice, search parties had passed within 50 yards of their hiding spot, close enough that Cole could hear their frustrated curses. Evelyn stirred first, her hand instinctively moving to the Webley at her side before her eyes fully opened. The gesture told Cole everything about how much this journey had changed her. The woman who'd stumbled into his camp weeks ago wouldn't have slept with a weapon in reach. Now it was second nature. "They're still out there," she whispered, noting the tension in Cole's posture. "And they'll keep searching until they find us or give up. Question is, which happens first?" Cole handed her a canteen. "Wake your father and David quietly. We need to move before full light." William groaned as Evelyn helped him sit up, his wounded side stiff despite the careful stitching. David looked better after a night's rest, though his eyes still held the haunted look of a man who'd spent too long as a prisoner. "How far to the archive entrance?" Cole asked William. The scholar pulled out a small notebook, its pages filled with sketches and calculations. "From here, maybe 2 miles. But we can't use the main entrance. It's compromised. Too many soldiers, too much attention." "There's another way in?" "According to the old records, yes. The builders created escape tunnels in case the city was ever besieged. One of them should emerge in a ravine about a half-mile east of the main entrance. William traced a path on his map. It'll be hidden, probably sealed, but if we can find it and force our way in, we can bypass all the defenses above ground. And the defenses underground? Evelyn asked. William's expression darkened. Those are another matter entirely. They moved through the forest like ghosts, using every bit of cover, stopping frequently to listen for pursuit. The search parties were systematic, organized, which meant Ashford had survived the battle and was coordinating the hunt. That worried Cole more than random mercenaries. Ashford was smart, experienced, and he had resources. The ravine appeared exactly where William's maps indicated. A deep cut in the earth, its sides thick with vegetation, a small stream running along the bottom. They descended carefully, the rocks slick with morning dew, William moving slowly but gamely despite his injury. There, William pointed to what looked like a natural rock face. See the pattern in the stone? Those aren't erosion marks, they're chisel marks, disguised to look natural. Cole examined the wall more closely. William was right. Beneath centuries of weathering, he could make out the regularity of worked stone. How do we open it? The Old Kingdom used counterweight systems. There should be a trigger mechanism nearby, something that looks natural, but isn't. William began searching the ravine walls, running his hands over stone, testing for loose rocks. David helped, both men moving with the focused intensity of archaeologists on a dig. Evelyn kept watch, her Webley ready, eyes scanning the ravine rim for any sign of pursuit. Cole joined her, appreciating her vigilance. She'd learned fast, adapted to danger in a way that suggested hidden reserves of strength. Found it. David's voice was barely above a whisper. He'd located a stone that looked like any other but rotated on a hidden pivot. When he turned it, there was a grinding sound deep within the wall, and a section of the rock face shifted inward, revealing darkness beyond. Remarkable, William breathed. 400 years and the mechanism still functions. Let's appreciate it later, Cole said. Right now we need to get inside before someone spots us. They slipped through the opening one by one. Cole went last, pausing to examine the mechanism. With effort, he managed to rotate the stone back, sealing the entrance behind them. The grinding sound echoed in the confined space, then silence fell like a weight. Total darkness surrounded them. Cole heard someone fumbling with matches. Then a lamp flared to life in William's hands, pushing back the shadows. They stood in a tunnel, perfectly circular, the walls covered in carved symbols that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. Welcome to Masika Wamawe, William said quietly. The foundation of stones. The tunnel stretched ahead, descending at a gentle angle into the earth. The air was cool, dry, untouched by the outside world for centuries. Their footsteps echoed strangely, the sound bouncing back in ways that suggested vast spaces beyond the reach of their lamplight. They walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, the tunnel unchanging, hypnotic in its uniformity. Then it opened into a chamber that made Cole's breath catch. It was enormous, easily 100 feet across, the ceiling lost in shadows above. The walls were covered floor to ceiling with carvings, astronomical charts, mathematical formulae, detailed anatomical drawings showing surgical procedures. Shelves carved into the stone held clay tablets, metal plates inscribed with text, sealed vessels that might contain anything. The archive, William whispered, awe evident in his voice. Everything I theorized, everything I hoped to find, it's all here. David moved to the nearest shelf, carefully examining a tablet. This is incredible. These medical diagrams show procedures that weren't discovered in Europe until the 19th century. Cataract surgery, bone setting, even what looks like a form of vaccination. And this, William pointed to a series of metal plates, shows the metallurgical process, the exact temperatures, the mineral combinations, everything needed to recreate their steel. Cole felt the weight of what they were looking at. This wasn't just treasure. This was knowledge that could revolutionize medicine, engineering, warfare. In the right hands, it could save lives. In the wrong hands, it could end them by the thousands. We're destroying all of it, he said flatly. No exceptions. Cole, wait, William protested. Some of this knowledge could help people. The medical techniques, the agricultural methods, and how long before the military applications get used first? How many wars get fought over who controls this technology? Cole met the scholar's eyes. You said it yourself. This is too dangerous to let anyone have. He's right, Father, Evelyn said quietly. We've seen what men will do just for the possibility of this knowledge. Imagine what they'd do with the reality of it. William looked around the chamber, at centuries of accumulated wisdom, at the life's work of a civilization that had been forgotten by history. Cole could see the conflict on the old man's face, the scholar warring with the realist, the desire to preserve warring with the need to protect. There has to be another way, William said, but his voice lacked conviction. There isn't. Cole was already examining the chamber, looking for the central support column William had mentioned. Where's the structural weak point? William pointed to the far end of the chamber, where a massive pillar rose from floor to ceiling. It was carved with intricate designs, scenes of daily life in the Old Kingdom, farmers planting crops, smiths working metal, astronomers studying the stars. That's what's holding everything up. Remove it, and this chamber collapses. The chambers above collapse in sequence. The whole archive becomes rubble. How do we remove it? We don't. Not directly, but if we could damage the base sufficiently, create enough structural instability, the weight of the mountain above would do the rest. Cole considered this. They had limited explosives, just what he'd salvaged from the British camp, maybe enough for one significant blast. It would have to be precise, placed exactly right. I'll need time to set the charges, he said, and we'll need to get far away before they blow. This whole hillside could come down. There's a problem, David said from across the chamber. He'd been exploring while they talked, and now stood at the entrance to another tunnel. We're not alone down here. Cole moved to join him, rifle ready. Beyond the lamplight, he could hear sounds, footsteps, voices echoing through stone passages. Someone else had found a way into the archive. Ashford's men? Evelyn asked. No, listen to the cadence. That's not military march. Cole strained to identify the sounds. That's the mercenaries. They must have found another entrance. Or they followed us. William looked back at the tunnel they'd come through. We may have led them straight here. The implications were clear. They were trapped between two groups of armed men, deep underground with limited ammunition and one way out. Cole's mind raced through options, each one worse than the last. We split up, he decided. William, David, you two stay here and prepare the charges. I'll show you how to set them, where to place them. Evelyn and I will lead the mercenaries away, buy you time to finish the job. That's suicide, Evelyn protested. It's survival. They're looking for people with the map. We give them what they want, or what they think they want, and keep them busy while your father does what needs to be done. William stepped forward. Cole, I can't ask you to sacrifice yourself for this. You're not asking. I'm volunteering. Cole began pulling out the explosives, showing William the detonation mechanism, explaining the precise placement needed. Give us 30 minutes, then blow it. Don't wait for us to get back. Don't hesitate. Just finish this. And if you don't make it out? Cole didn't answer. They all knew the odds. He checked his ammunition one more time. 18 rounds for the Mauser, 8 for his backup pistol. Not enough for a sustained fight, but enough to be convincing. Evelyn had 12 rounds in her Webley. They'd have to make every shot count. Stay close, he told her. When I say run, you run. When I say shoot, you shoot. No hesitation, no second guessing. I know. No, you don't. Not really. Cole gripped her shoulders, making sure she understood. What we're about to do, it's not like the ambush in the pass or the fight at the garrison. This is close quarters, underground, nowhere to retreat. People are going to die, Evelyn. Maybe us. You need to be ready for that. She met his eyes, and he saw the fear there, but also determination. I'm ready. They moved toward the sounds of the approaching mercenaries, deliberately making noise, leaving obvious tracks in the dust. Cole wanted to be found, wanted to draw the hunters into chasing specific prey. The tunnel branched multiple times, a maze of passages leading deeper into the archive complex. Cole took random turns, sometimes doubling back, creating a trail that would be confusing to follow, but clearly intentional. Behind them, he could hear the mercenaries getting closer, their voices echoing through stone corridors. There, someone shouted. I see lamplight. Cole and Evelyn ran, their footsteps loud in the confined space. The tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller than the first but still impressive, filled with what looked like astronomical instruments made of bronze and stone. "This way!" Cole led Evelyn toward a narrow passage on the far side. Behind them, the mercenaries poured into the chamber, at least 6 men heavily armed. "Stop!" The leader, Cole recognized him as one of the men from the valley, raised his rifle. "There's nowhere to run, Mercer! Give us the map!" Cole fired twice, not aiming to kill but to scatter them, to buy seconds. Then he and Evelyn were in the passage, running through darkness barely illuminated by their lamp. The tunnel twisted, turned, descended sharply. Cole's sense of direction was scrambled by the constant changes. He had no idea if they were heading toward the surface or deeper into the earth. All that mattered was distance, time, keeping the mercenaries focused on them instead of finding William and David. They emerged into a chamber that stopped Cole dead. It was vast, cathedral-like, with a ceiling that soared into darkness. But what filled the space made his blood run cold. Skeletons. Hundreds of them, arranged in precise rows, each one seated in a carved stone chair, facing toward a central platform. On the platform stood a figure made of the legendary steel, a warrior in full armor, frozen in time. "What is this place?" Evelyn whispered. "A tomb. Or a temple. Maybe both." Cole moved cautiously into the chamber, his instincts screaming danger. "These people, they chose to be here. Look at their positions, deliberate, ritualistic." "The last defenders of the kingdom." William's voice came from the chamber entrance, making them both spin around. The scholar stood there, David beside him, both looking pale and shaken. "I read about this in the Portuguese accounts. When the capital fell, the remaining warriors chose to seal themselves in the archive rather than let its secrets be taken." "What are you doing here?" Cole demanded. "You're supposed to be setting the charges." "They're set. 30-minute fuse already burning." William checked his pocket watch. "We have 26 minutes to get out." "Then why?" "Because we heard gunfire and thought you might need help. And because I couldn't let you die down here without at least trying to get you out." Cole wanted to argue, wanted to berate them for taking the risk, but there was no time. The mercenaries were close, their voices echoing through the passages, closing in. "The exit tunnel," David said. "I marked our path coming in. We can backtrack, reach the surface before the explosions." "Not with them on our heels." Cole assessed their position. They were in an indefensible space with limited ammunition against superior numbers. The smart play was to surrender, trade the map for safe passage. But Cole was tired of smart plays. He'd spent 3 years running from who he was, from what he was capable of. Maybe it was time to stop running. "Take Evelyn and David," he told William. "Follow the markers out. I'll buy you time." "Cole, no," Evelyn started. "Not a discussion. Your father needs you. David needs you. And I need you to survive this so you can tell my daughter what happened here. Tell her I chose to do the right thing. Tell her I finally figured out what redemption actually means." "You're coming with us," Evelyn insisted, grabbing his arm. "I'm doing what I do best, giving people time to escape." Cole gently removed her hand. "Now go. Please." William understood. He'd probably understood from the beginning that this was how it might end. He nodded once, respect in his eyes, then took Evelyn's other arm. "Come on. We have to move." Evelyn resisted for a moment, tears streaming down her face, then let herself be pulled away. David followed, leaving Cole alone in the chamber of the dead. The mercenaries entered cautiously, spreading out, rifles sweeping the space. Their leader stepped forward, smiling coldly. "Brave, Mercer. Stupid, but brave." He gestured to his men. "Kill him. Take the others alive if possible." Cole's first shot took the leader in the shoulder, spinning him around. His second dropped the man next to him. Then he was moving, using the stone chairs as cover, making himself a difficult target in the maze of skeletons. The mercenaries returned fire, bullets striking stone and bone, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Cole fired methodically, conserving ammunition, each shot carefully aimed. He hit 2 more, wounding rather than killing, creating chaos instead of body counts. But there were too many. A bullet grazed his arm. Another struck the stone inches from his head, spraying him with fragments. He was being flanked, surrounded, pushed back toward the platform with the steel warrior. Cole climbed onto the platform, using the warrior statue as cover. From here, he could see the entire chamber, could control the space. The mercenaries advanced more carefully now, having learned respect for his marksmanship. "You're just delaying the inevitable," someone shouted. "That's what I do best," Cole muttered. He checked his ammunition. 4 rounds left in the Mauser, 6 in his pistol. Not enough to stop them all. A massive explosion shook the chamber, dust raining from the ceiling. The charges William had set were going off, right on schedule. The mercenaries looked around in panic as the ground trembled beneath their feet. "What did you do?" the wounded leader screamed. "I stopped caring about getting out alive," Cole replied. "Question is, do you want to join me?" The message was clear. The archive was collapsing. Anyone who stayed would be buried alive. The mercenaries looked at each other, making rapid calculations about treasure versus survival. Survival won. They ran, scrambling toward the exits, abandoning their wounded leader who couldn't keep pace. Cole watched them go, then slid down from the platform. His arm was bleeding, his ears ringing from the gunfire, but he was alive. The tremors were getting worse. Stone was cracking overhead, entire sections of ceiling beginning to sag. Cole had minutes at best to find a way out. He ran toward the passage William had taken, following scuff marks in the dust. Behind him, the chamber of the dead began to collapse, the centuries-old skeletons disappearing under tons of falling rock. The steel warrior toppled from its platform, crashing to the floor, the legendary metal finally finding rest in darkness. The tunnels were disintegrating, sections falling away, creating new obstacles with each tremor. Cole climbed over rubble, squeezed through gaps, drove himself forward with pure will. His lungs burned. His wounded arm screamed protest, but he kept moving. He saw light ahead. Not lamplight, actual sunlight, streaming through a crack in the tunnel wall. The explosions must have created new openings, fractured the hillside in unpredictable ways. Cole threw himself at the crack, widening it with desperate strength, pulling himself through just as the tunnel behind him collapsed completely. He tumbled down a slope of loose rock, unable to control his descent, bouncing off stones and roots until he hit level ground hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. He lay there gasping, covered in dust and blood, staring up at the African sky. Alive. Impossibly, incredibly alive. "Cole!" Evelyn's voice, distant but clear. "Cole, where are you?" "Here," he called back, his voice hoarse. "I'm here." She appeared above him, David and William close behind, all of them looking battered but intact. Evelyn scrambled down to him, her hands checking him for injuries, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You insane, suicidal, magnificent idiot," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You were supposed to die down there. That was your grand heroic sacrifice." "I changed my mind," Cole replied. "Figured I'd stick around, see how this story ends." William helped him sit up. Behind them, the hillside was still collapsing, huge sections sliding away as the underground chambers failed in sequence. The archive that had survived 4 centuries was being erased in minutes, all its knowledge, all its power, disappearing into rubble. "It's done," William said quietly. "All of it. Gone." "Any regrets?" Cole asked. The scholar thought for a moment. "Ask me in a year. Right now, I'm just glad we're alive." They watched the destruction together, 4 people who'd walked through fire and somehow emerged on the other side. When the last tremor faded and silence returned, they began the long walk away from the ruins. They'd gone maybe a mile when David, who'd been bringing up the rear, called out a warning. "We've got company!" Cole turned, rifle already coming up despite his exhaustion. A figure stood on a ridge above them, backlit by the afternoon sun. Even from this distance, Cole recognized the military bearing, the precise posture. Colonel Ashford. The British officer descended slowly, alone, his hands conspicuously empty of weapons. When he reached speaking distance, he stopped, studying the group with an expression Cole couldn't quite read. "Dr. Cross," Ashford said formally. "Miss Cross. Mr. Mercer." "Colonel," William replied warily. "Come to arrest us? For what? Destroying property that didn't belong to anyone? Preventing a war that would have killed thousands?" Ashford shook his head. "I'm a soldier, Dr. Cross, not a monster. I follow orders, but I'm not blind to their consequences." "You chased us across half of East Africa," Evelyn said. "I did, because my orders were to secure the archive at any cost. But I've been a soldier for 23 years, and I've learned to recognize when a mission has failed. Ashford gestured toward the collapsed hillside. That archive is gone. Even if we excavated for years, we'd never recover enough to be useful. The mission is over. So what now? Cole kept his rifle ready, not quite trusting this sudden reasonableness. Now I file a report saying the archive was destroyed by geological instability during our investigation. No mention of the map, no mention of metallurgical secrets, no mention of any of you. Ashford met William's eyes. Your research, Doctor. Cross was lost in this collapse. Tragic, but these things happen. You'll go home to England, resume your academic career, and never speak of this again. And if we refuse this generous offer? Then I mention in my report that you were working with foreign agents to sell British strategic interests. You'll be arrested the moment you set foot in any British territory, tried for treason, and hanged. Ashford's voice was matter of fact. I'm offering you your lives and your freedom. I suggest you take them. William looked at his daughter, at David, at Cole. They'd come too far, lost too much to end up in British prisons or at the end of British ropes. We accept, William said. Wise choice. Ashford pulled out a sealed envelope from his jacket. These are travel papers authorizing you to move freely through British East Africa. You have 2 weeks to leave the territory. After that, the authorization expires. He handed the envelope to William, then turned his attention to Cole. You, Mr. Mercer, are a problem. Story of my life. Indeed. You're wanted by various parties for various reasons, none of them legitimate, but all of them problematic. However, I've also been authorized to offer you employment. The British Army could use a tracker of your caliber. Thanks, but I'm done with killing. Are you? Because from what I've heard, you've added considerably to your count in the last few weeks. Cole wanted to deny it, but couldn't. The mercenaries he'd shot, the soldiers caught in crossfire, even the ones he'd only wounded, violence had followed him like a shadow, no matter how hard he tried to outrun it. Those were different, he said. How? Because you did them for good reasons instead of money? Ashford shook his head. A killer is a killer, Mr. Mercer. The only difference is what we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Then I guess I'll keep having bad dreams. Cole lowered his rifle. My answer's still no. I expected as much. Very well. You're also covered by these travel papers, as Dr. Cross's hired guide, but after 2 weeks, you're on your own. Whatever happens then is not my concern. Ashford turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The men who kidnapped you, Dr. Cross, the ones working for the German mining interests, they've been neutralized. Neutralized? William asked. Killed, arrested, or driven out of the territory. Your assistant's freedom bought their destruction. Consider it payment for services rendered. Ashford smiled slightly. After all, we couldn't have foreign agents interfering in British colonial affairs. With that, he walked away, back toward wherever his surviving forces were regrouping. Cole watched him go, understanding that they'd just made a deal with someone who was simultaneously their savior and their jailer. Can we trust him? David asked. He'll keep his word about the travel papers, Cole said. Whether that's enough is another question. They spent that night in the ruins of the old capital, finding shelter in one of the surface structures that had survived the collapse. It felt appropriate somehow, sleeping among the bones of a civilization that had tried to protect its knowledge and failed. William sat by their small fire, writing in his notebook, recording everything he could remember about the archive before the memories faded. Cole watched him work, understanding the impulse. The scholar in William couldn't help but document, even knowing the documentation would never be published. What will you do? Cole asked. Back in England, I mean. Oh, resume teaching, I suppose. Write papers on subjects that won't get me killed. William set down his pen. Try to be a better father to Evelyn. I've neglected that duty for too long. She turned out pretty well regardless. No thanks to me. William looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully despite the day's violence. She's stronger than I ever gave her credit for. Braver too. She gets that from you. I think she gets it from necessity. The world doesn't give women much choice about being brave. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire. Finally, William spoke again. What about you, Cole? What's next? I don't know. For 3 years I had a plan. Be better, prove I'd changed, earn my way back into Sarah's life. But now, he gestured at himself, at the dried blood and dust, at the rifle he couldn't seem to put down. I'm not sure I'm any different than I was. Of course you are. The man you were wouldn't have risked his life for strangers, wouldn't have stayed behind to give us time to escape, wouldn't have chosen people over treasure. The man I was wouldn't have gotten into this situation in the first place. Perhaps. But that man also wouldn't have gotten out of it. Evolution, Cole. We become who we need to be. Cole wasn't sure he believed that, but he appreciated the sentiment. He pulled out his own small notebook, the one where he'd been writing letters to Sarah. Letters he'd never sent, knowing she wouldn't read them. But maybe it was time to try again. Maybe, with Evelyn's help, he could write something Sarah would actually want to hear. Not excuses or justifications, but truth. The story of a man who'd lost his way and was still trying to find it. The next morning, they began the long journey toward the coast. Ashford's travel papers worked as promised. Border guards waved them through. Officials asked no questions. It was as if they'd become invisible, ghosts passing through a world that wanted to forget they existed. At a trading post, they bought supplies and fresh clothes. Cole caught his reflection in a piece of polished metal and barely recognized the man staring back. Leaner, harder, eyes that had seen too much. But also something else, a clarity that hadn't been there before. Evelyn noticed him studying his reflection. Seen someone new? Seen someone old, actually. Just can't decide if that's good or bad. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's just honest. They reached Mombasa 10 days after leaving the ruins, using 8 of their 14-day window. The port city was exactly as Cole remembered it. Chaotic, vibrant, dangerous. Ships from a dozen nations crowded the harbor, their flags snapping in the ocean breeze. William and David booked passage on a British steamer leaving for England in 2 days. They invited Cole to join them, but he declined. England held nothing for him, and he suspected Ashford's protection only extended so far. The night before the ship was to sail, Evelyn found Cole sitting on the harbor wall, watching the sun set over the Indian Ocean. "You're not coming with us," she said. It wasn't a question. "No, this is where we part ways." "Because of Sarah?" "Because I've got one more chance to get this right. If I run to England, I'm running away again. If I stay, face whatever comes, maybe I can prove I've actually changed." Evelyn sat beside him. "You saved our lives. Multiple times. That's not nothing." "It's not enough. Not yet." Cole pulled out the final letter he'd written to Sarah. "I need a favor. When you get to England, could you deliver this? In person, if possible. I think hearing about all this from someone who was there, someone she can trust, might make a difference." "Of course." Evelyn took the letter carefully. "What if she still doesn't want to see you?" "Then at least I'll know I tried everything I could. That's more than I've been able to say for the last 17 years. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared and stars began to emerge. Finally, Evelyn stood. "Thank you, Cole, for everything. For not taking the easy path. Thank you for giving me a reason not to." She kissed him on the cheek, a brief gesture of affection and farewell, then walked back toward the city. Cole watched her go, this fierce woman who'd tracked him down and dragged him into an adventure that had nearly killed them all. But they'd survived. Against all odds, all logic, they'd survived. The archive was destroyed, the knowledge lost. The war that might have been prevented. William and David were free. Evelyn had her father back, and Cole had proven something to himself, even if he couldn't quite articulate what. The ship sailed 2 days later. Cole watched from a distance as William, David, and Evelyn boarded, their small party disappearing among the crowds of passengers. He waited until the steamer cleared the harbor, until its smoke was just a smudge on the horizon before turning away. Mombasa was dangerous for him now. Ashford's protection had expired, and there were still mercenaries, still treasure hunters, still people who knew his name and wanted him dead or working for them. He needed to disappear again, find new territory, start over. But this time, it wouldn't be running away. It would be moving forward. Cole walked through the city's markets, buying supplies for the interior. He'd head west, into territories he'd never explored, places where his reputation hadn't yet reached. He'd find work as a guide, use his skills to help people instead of hunt them. Maybe, eventually, He'd build something worth showing Sarah, worth showing himself. At the edge of the market, he paused at a postal station. On impulse, he wrote one more letter, not to Sarah this time, but to Chen at the trading post. Brief, straightforward, asking the merchant to pass word if anyone came looking for Cole Mercer. Not threats or enemies, but one specific 17-year-old girl from England should she ever decide to come find her father. It was a long shot. Sarah probably wouldn't come, probably wouldn't even read Evelyn's account of their adventure. But Cole was learning that hope wasn't about probability, it was about possibility. He posted the letter and walked toward the city gates, toward the frontier that had nearly killed him, that had tested him, that had given him back something he'd lost. The African sun beat down merciless as ever. The land ahead promised nothing but hardship and danger, and Cole walked into it with his eyes open. Somewhere behind him, a ship carried 3 survivors toward safety and civilization. Somewhere ahead, the wilderness waited with all its brutal honesty. And somewhere in between, a man who'd finally stopped running from his past began running toward his future. The frontier remained unforgiving, but this time Cole Mercer was ready for it. 6 months passed like water through stone, slow, persistent, wearing away the sharp edges Cole had carried from the archive. He'd found work in the Western Territories, guiding survey teams and mapping expeditions for companies that asked no questions about his past. The pay was modest, the work honest, and for the first time in years, Cole slept without nightmares. He'd established a base camp near Lake Victoria in a region where 3 tribal territories met and neutral ground was respected by necessity. The local chiefs knew him as the quiet tracker who paid fair prices, spoke passable Swahili, and kept his promises. It wasn't much of a reputation, but it was clean. That mattered more than Cole had expected. The rainy season had come and gone, leaving the land lush and green. Cole was preparing for another survey expedition when the runner found him, a young Kikuyu man who'd traveled for 3 days to deliver a message. From Chen's trading post, the runner said, handing over a sealed envelope. He said it was urgent, said to tell you a ship came from England. Cole's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a brief note in Chen's careful script, and beneath it, a letter addressed in handwriting. Cole didn't recognize, but which made his heart race anyway. Chen's note was characteristically direct. She arrived 2 weeks ago, waited at my post for 10 days before moving on, heading west toward Lake Victoria asking about Cole Mercer. Thought you should know. Also, the British are still looking for you. Watch yourself. The second letter, the one in unfamiliar handwriting, was longer. Mr. Mercer, you don't know me, but I'm traveling with your daughter, Sarah. My name is Evelyn Cross. I kept my promise. I found her in London and told her everything about the archive, the battle, the sacrifice you made. She didn't want to believe me at first, called me a liar, said her father was a killer who abandoned her, that no story could change that. But I kept talking. I showed her your letters, the ones you'd written but never sent. I told her about the man who chose people over treasure, who stayed behind to give strangers time to escape, who spent years trying to become someone worthy of being called a father. Something I said got through, because 3 months later, she showed up at my door with a packed bag and a one-way ticket to Africa. She wants to meet you, Cole. She's terrified and angry and hopeful all at once. We're following your trail west. If you're reading this, don't run. For once in your life, stay put and let someone find you. She needs to see that you're real, that the man I described actually exists. Don't let her down. Evelyn. Cole read the letter 3 times, each pass making it feel more impossible and more real. Sarah was here, in Africa, looking for him. After 17 years of silence, of returned letters and broken promises, his daughter had crossed an ocean to find him. Terror and hope warred in his chest. What if he disappointed her? What if the man he'd become still wasn't enough? What if she took one look at the scars and the weathered face and the rifle that never left his side and saw only the killer she'd grown up without? Bad news? The runner asked, misreading Cole's expression. No, the opposite. Cole folded the letters carefully, tucking them into his shirt pocket near his heart. How long ago did they leave Chen's post? The woman said 2 weeks when I left. Maybe 18 days now. Cole did the math. Sarah and Evelyn would be moving slower than an experienced tracker. especially in unfamiliar territory. But 18 days was a significant head start. They could be anywhere within a 100-mile radius, following outdated information, asking questions that might lead them into danger. "I need to find them," Cole said, already gathering his essential gear. The survey expedition would have to wait. Some things mattered more than money. He paid the runner generously and sent him back with a message for Chen. "Found. Tell anyone who asks that Cole Mercer headed south." A false trail, in case the British were serious about still hunting him. Then Cole headed west, moving fast, asking questions at every village and trading post. A white woman and a young white girl traveling together were impossible to miss in this region. Someone would have seen them. He found their trail 3 days later at a small settlement near the lake. The village elder remembered them clearly. The older woman who spoke like educated British but without the usual colonial arrogance, and the younger one with fire in her eyes and questions about a tracker named Mercer. "They went north," the elder told him, following stories about a white hunter who lives alone, who turned away from blood. "I told them that man was a ghost, a legend, but the young one, she said ghosts were just people waiting to be found." Cole's throat tightened. That sounded like something he might have said once, before the world beat the poetry out of him. Maybe Sarah had inherited more than just his restlessness. "How long ago?" 5 days? Maybe 6. Cole thanked the elder and continued north, pushing himself harder now that he knew he was closing the distance. But urgency made him careless. He was so focused on the trail ahead that he almost missed the danger closing in from behind. The warning came from a Maasai scout he'd befriended months earlier, a young warrior named Kipchoge, who appeared seemingly from nowhere as Cole made camp one evening. "You're being followed," Kipchoge said without preamble. "White men, 6 of them. Soldiers, not merchants. They ask about you in villages, show a picture drawn by someone who saw you well." "How far back?" 2 days, maybe less. They move fast like men on a mission." Cole cursed. Ashford or his successors, still trying to tie up loose ends, or maybe the Dutch mercenaries seeking revenge for their lost treasure. Either way, armed men tracking him while Sarah was somewhere ahead created an impossible situation. "The 2 white women," Cole said. "You've seen them?" Kipchoge nodded. "They passed through Maasai lands 3 days ago. The elders let them continue because the older one knew the proper greetings, showed respect. They go toward the highlands, following stories. I need to reach them before the soldiers reach me." "Then you need to move faster than possible." Kipchoge studied him. "Or you need to stop running and face what follows." "I can't. Not now. Not with Sarah so close." "Then lead them away. Give the women time to find safety while you deal with the hunters." Kipchoge smiled slightly. "It's what you do, yes? Sacrifice yourself so others can escape?" Cole wanted to argue, but the Maasai warrior was right. If he continued towards Sarah with armed men on his trail, he'd lead danger straight to her. But if he diverted, created a false trail away from her path, the soldiers would follow him instead. It meant delaying the reunion he'd waited 17 years for. It meant risking that Sarah would give up, assume he'd run again, return to England without ever knowing he'd been trying to reach her. But it also meant keeping her safe. And that, ultimately, was what fathers were supposed to do. "Tell me exactly where they were heading," Cole said. Kipchoge described the route, toward a mission station in the highlands where a doctor treated the sick and asked no questions about who came seeking help. A safe place, neutral ground where Sarah and Evelyn could wait without danger. "Get a message to them," Cole instructed. "Tell them I'm coming, but I need to handle something first. Tell them to wait at the mission, that I'll be there within 2 weeks. Can you do that?" "I can, but the soldiers, I'll handle the soldiers." Cole began repacking his gear, planning a route that would take him east, away from the highlands, into territory rough enough to slow pursuit. "I've been running from men like this for years. Time I stopped running and started leading." Kipchoge left to deliver the message, and Cole set out before dawn, deliberately leaving obvious tracks pointing east. He made no effort to hide his trail, wanting the soldiers to find it easily, to commit to following him into the wilderness. By the second day, he could feel them closing in, could sense the pressure of pursuit like a physical weight. They were good, disciplined, not the usual colonial militia, but professional trackers who knew their business. Cole had to respect that even as he planned how to lose them. He led them into the Rift Valley, through terrain that was spectacular and treacherous in equal measure. Volcanic slopes, hidden crevasses, sudden drops that appeared without warning. The kind of country where one wrong step meant death, where local knowledge was the only thing keeping you alive. Cole had that knowledge. The soldiers didn't. He began to use the land against them, leading them along paths that looked solid but weren't, past water sources he knew were poisoned by minerals, through areas where the local wildlife was particularly aggressive. Not trying to kill them, he'd meant what he said about being done with killing, but wearing them down, making them question whether catching him was worth the cost. On the 5th day, he made his stand at a place the locals called Devil's Gate, a narrow passage through a volcanic ridge, the only viable route for miles in either direction. Cole positioned himself on the high ground, well supplied with water and ammunition, and waited. The soldiers arrived just before sunset, 6 men, as Kipchoge had said, led by a British lieutenant who looked too young for his rank. They approached the passage cautiously, rifles ready, clearly aware it was a perfect ambush position. "Mr. Mercer," the lieutenant called out. "I'm Lieutenant James Thornton, His Majesty's Colonial Forces. I'm authorized to bring you in for questioning regarding events at the Msika Wamawe Archive. Surrender peacefully, and you'll be treated fairly." "Define fairly," Cole called back. "A trial in Nairobi? Representation by counsel? Every legal protection afforded British subjects. I'm not a British subject, I'm an American. Without standing warrants in British territory, the distinction doesn't help you." Cole had to admire the lieutenant's directness. "What if I refuse?" "Then we take you by force. I have orders to bring you in alive if possible, but dead is acceptable." "Honest. I appreciate that." Cole showed himself briefly, letting them see he was alone. "But here's my counteroffer. You turn around, go back to Nairobi, file a report saying Cole Mercer died in the wilderness. Natural causes, animal attack, whatever sounds plausible." "And why would I do that?" "Because I'm meeting my daughter for the first time in 17 years, and I'll be damned if I miss that appointment because of some bureaucrat's need for revenge over a collapsed cave." Silence. Cole could see the soldiers conferring, the lieutenant's posture suggesting uncertainty. Whatever they'd been told about him, they probably hadn't expected this. "I have a daughter, too," Thornton finally said. "Young thing, only 3 years old. I understand what you're feeling, but I have my orders." "Then we have a problem, because I'm not coming in until I've seen Sarah. You can try to take me, but this position is defensible. I've got water for 2 weeks, ammunition for longer than that, and I know this country better than you do. You want to spend that time besieging me while your supplies run low and the local predators start seeing 6 targets instead of 1? More conferring. Cole could see them weighing options, calculating odds. They were soldiers, trained to follow orders, but they were also men who wanted to go home alive. 2 weeks, Thornton said finally. You have 2 weeks to see your daughter. Then you surrender yourself to British authorities in Nairobi. You have my word we'll treat you fairly, that any trial will be legitimate, that you'll have proper representation. And if I refuse after 2 weeks? Then we hunt you to the ends of the earth, and next time we won't offer terms. Thornton stepped into the open, showing himself as a gesture of good faith. I'm bending the rules as far as they'll go, Mr. Mercer. I suggest you accept before my commanding officer decides to court-martial me for unauthorized negotiations. Cole considered it. 2 weeks to reach Sarah, to have the conversation he'd been preparing for years, to prove he'd become someone worthy of being called a father. Then surrender, trial, probably prison or deportation. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. And maybe it was what redemption actually looked like. Not escaping consequences, but facing them after you'd done the right thing. Deal, Cole said. But I want it in writing, signed, dated, witnessed by your men. Agreed. Come down from there, let's do this properly. Cole descended carefully, keeping his rifle visible but not threatening. Thornton was as good as his word, producing paper and pencil, writing out the terms of their agreement in formal military language. All 6 soldiers signed as witnesses, their names and ranks documented. You're trusting me to honor this, Cole observed. I'm trusting you to want to see your daughter more than you want to run. Thornton folded the agreement and handed it to Cole. 2 weeks, Mr. Mercer. Don't make me regret this. They parted ways as the sun set, the soldiers heading back toward civilization, Cole continuing toward the highlands. He moved faster now, no longer needing to hide his trail, focused only on reaching the mission station before his 2 weeks ran out. The landscape changed as he climbed, the harsh volcanic terrain giving way to green hills and forests. The air grew cooler, easier to breathe, scented with pine and eucalyptus. It reminded Cole of places he'd been decades ago, before Africa, before Sarah, when the world had seemed full of possibility instead of consequences. He reached the mission station on the 10th day, a collection of whitewashed buildings clustered around a small church, set in a valley that looked like it had been carved specifically for peace. Smoke rose from cooking fires, children played in a yard, and somewhere someone was singing a hymn that drifted on the wind. Cole stood at the edge of the compound, suddenly paralyzed. Sarah was here, somewhere in these buildings, waiting or not waiting, hoping or not hoping. 17 years of absence collapsed into this single moment, and Cole found himself terrified in a way that combat and danger had never managed. What if she hated him? What if she'd changed her mind, decided he wasn't worth knowing? What if he opened his mouth and all the careful words he'd prepared dissolved into inadequacy? "You must be Cole Mercer." The voice came from behind him, male, accented with Scottish burrs. Cole turned to find a man in his 50s, wearing a doctor's coat over practical field clothes, studying him with intelligent eyes. "Dr. Robert McLeod," the man introduced himself. "I run this mission. Your daughter and Miss Cross arrived 6 days ago. They've been waiting for you." "Are they?" Cole's voice caught. "How is she?" "Nervous, angry, hopeful, scared, everything you'd expect from a young woman about to meet a father she barely remembers." McLeod's expression softened. "She's a remarkable girl, Cole, strong-willed, intelligent, doesn't suffer fools. She gets that from you, I think. She gets it from her mother. I was the fool. Was being the operative word from what Miss Cross tells me. She speaks very highly of you." "Evelyn's generous. Evelyn's honest. There's a difference." McLeod gestured toward the main building. "They're in the library. Sarah's been reading everything we have on East Africa, trying to understand the place that changed you." "Go on." "She knows you're coming. One of the children saw you approaching and ran to tell her." Cole walked toward the building like a man approaching judgment. His hands were shaking, his mouth dry despite the water he'd drunk. He'd faced down armed mercenaries, navigated deadly terrain, made life-or-death decisions without hesitation. But this, talking to his own daughter, felt impossible. The library was small but well-stocked, books lining shelves made from local timber. Afternoon light streamed through open windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. And there, standing by a table covered in maps and journals, was Sarah. She was 17, though she looked older. Taller than Cole remembered from the single photograph he carried, with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, and eyes that were startlingly familiar because they were his own. She wore traveling clothes, dusty from the journey, and stood with a posture that suggested she was ready to fight or flee, depending on how this went. Evelyn stood nearby, positioned to offer support, but staying out of the way. She caught Cole's eye and nodded once. Encouragement, permission, a reminder that she'd done her part by getting Sarah here. "Hello, Sarah," Cole said, his voice rougher than intended. Sarah studied him for a long moment, taking in the scars, the weathered face, the hands that had seen too much violence. "You look older than in the pictures." "That's what 17 years will do. 17 years and God knows how many fights." She gestured at the scar cutting through his eyebrow. "That wasn't there in the photos Mother kept. Got that one about 10 years ago. Disagreement with a buffalo." "Who won?" "The buffalo. But I survived, so we'll call it a draw." A ghost of a smile crossed Sarah's face, there and gone so quickly Cole almost missed it. She moved to the table, putting furniture between them like a barrier. "Evelyn told me about the archive, about what you did. She told you her version. The reality was messier. She said you stayed behind so they could escape, that you were willing to die to protect them and destroy knowledge that could start wars. I got lucky. Wouldn't call that heroic. What would you call it?" Cole thought about that, about all the words he'd rehearsed and how inadequate they seemed now. "Necessary. I made choices that hurt people, including you and your mother. The archive was a chance to make a different choice. Doesn't erase the past, but it's a start." Sarah's hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. You left when I was 6 months old. Do you remember that? 6 months. Barely old enough to recognize faces, and you were gone. Mother told me you'd be back, that you were just working, just earning money for our future. I believed her for years. I know. When did you stop? When did you decide that whatever you were chasing was more important than coming home? The question landed like a physical blow. Cole had known it was coming, had prepared answers, but they all felt hollow now. I don't know. It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 small choices, each one seeming justified at the time. One more job, one more payday, one more adventure. Before I knew it, years had passed, and I didn't know how to go back. Didn't know how, or didn't want to. Both. I was afraid that if I came home, you'd see what I'd become. What I'd always been, really. Someone who was better at violence than love. Better at leaving than staying. Sarah's eyes glistened, but she didn't let the tears fall. So you proved yourself right. You left, became exactly what you feared you were, and then sent letters full of excuses thinking that would fix it. No, I sent letters hoping you'd know I was thinking of you, that even though I failed as a father, I never stopped wanting to be one. That's not enough. Sarah's voice cracked, emotion breaking through her careful control. Wanting isn't doing. Thinking about me while you were off killing elephants or guiding rich men or whatever the hell you did out here, that doesn't give me a father. Cole absorbed the words, the anger he deserved, the pain he'd caused. You're right. It doesn't. Nothing I say will give you back the years I stole from us. But I'm here now, Sarah. I came when you called, and I'll stay for as long as you'll let me. Until when? Until the next adventure. Until staying gets boring or hard or uncomfortable. Until you tell me to leave. Or until the British arrest me in 4 days, whichever comes first. That stopped her. What? Cole explained about Lieutenant Thornton, about the agreement he'd signed, about choosing 2 weeks with her over indefinite freedom. Sarah listened, her expression unreadable, processing this information. You're turning yourself in? Voluntarily? I made a deal. Man I'm trying to be keeps his deals. The man you're trying to be, Sarah repeated. Is he different from the man you were? I'd like to think so. But you'll have to judge that yourself. Sarah looked at Evelyn, seeking confirmation or perspective. Evelyn stepped forward slightly. Everything I told you about him is true, Sarah. He's not perfect. He's made terrible choices and he carries them like stones. But when it mattered, when he could have taken money and walked away, he chose to help us. He chose people over profit, sacrifice over safety. That's not the man who left you. That's someone trying very hard to be better. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. No, Evelyn agreed, but it's the only way to start. Sarah turned back to Cole, searching his face for something. Honesty, sincerity, proof that he was worth the risk of opening herself to more hurt. Whatever she saw must have been enough, because some of the rigidity left her posture. I don't forgive you, she said clearly. I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. 17 years of absence isn't erased by one noble act or 2 weeks of presence. I know. But I want to understand. I want to hear the whole story, not just Evelyn's version. I want to know who you were, who you are, and why you think you deserve a second chance. I'll tell you everything. The good, the bad, the unforgivable. You deserve the truth. And when the British come for you, what then? Then I face whatever consequences I've earned. Trial, prison, deportation, whatever the law decides. But at least I'll face it knowing I spent these 4 days being honest with you. Sarah nodded slowly. All right, we talk. But I make no promises beyond that. That's more than I have any right to ask for. They spent the rest of the afternoon in that library, Cole telling his story from the beginning, meeting Sarah's mother, the early jobs that took him away, the spiral into violence and greed that had defined his 30s. Sarah listened without interruption, her face carefully neutral, only her eyes betraying the emotions churning beneath. Evelyn quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Through the window, Cole could see her walking in the Mission Gardens, giving them space to navigate this impossible reunion. As the sun set, Dr. McLeod brought them dinner, setting it on the table without comment. They ate while Cole continued his story, bringing it up to the moment Evelyn had appeared in his camp, the moment everything had changed. She was terrifying, Cole said with a slight smile. Walked right into my camp with a bullet wound and men chasing her. Acted like it was perfectly normal. Reminded me of you, actually. You don't know me well enough to make comparisons. Fair. But your mother used to say you had my stubbornness and her sense. Looks like she was right. Mother died 2 years ago, Sarah said quietly. Fever. She made me promise I wouldn't hate you, that I'd at least try to understand why you left. Cole felt the words like a knife. I didn't know. I'm sorry. She never stopped hoping you'd come back. Even after all the returned letters, all the years of silence, she kept a place set for you at dinner for my whole childhood, just in case. Sarah's voice hardened. I used to hate seeing that empty chair, hate her for being naive enough to believe you cared. She wasn't naive. She was kind. That's different. Is it? Because kindness without wisdom seems pretty naive to me. Cole couldn't argue with that. They finished eating in heavy silence, the weight of lost years pressing down on them. Finally, Sarah stood. I need to think. Process all this. I'll see you tomorrow? I'll be here. For the next 4 days, I'll be wherever you want me to be. Sarah nodded and left, her footsteps echoing in the quiet building. Cole sat alone in the library as darkness fell, wondering if he'd said the right things, done enough, been honest enough, wondering if 4 days was anywhere near sufficient to repair 17 years of damage. Evelyn found him there an hour later, sitting in the dark among the books. She lit a lamp and sat across from him. That was hard to watch, she said. That was hard to live through. She's angrier than I expected. She has every right to be. I'm just grateful she's willing to talk at all. Evelyn reached across and took his hand, a gesture of solidarity, of friendship forged in violence and survival. She came all this way, Cole, across an ocean, into country she'd never seen, looking for a father she barely remembered. People don't do that if they don't care. Or they do it to get closure, to tell me exactly what they think before walking away forever. Maybe, but I don't think so. I spent 3 months with her before we came here. She's angry, yes, but underneath that anger is hope. She wants to believe you've changed, that you're worth knowing. Give her time to see it. I've got 4 days. Then make them count. The next 3 days were the strangest of Cole's life. He and Sarah fell into a cautious routine. Mornings walking the mission grounds while he answered her endless questions. Afternoons working side by side in the medical clinic where Sarah helped doctor. McLeod treat local patients. Evenings sharing meals while Cole continued his story. Sarah watched him constantly, testing everything he said against his actions, looking for cracks in his facade. She asked brutal questions about the people he'd killed, the choices he'd made, the years he'd wasted. Cole answered honestly, even when honesty made him look terrible, especially then. On the second day, a patient came to the clinic who'd been mauled by a leopard, his arm torn and infected. Cole watched Sarah work alongside the doctor, her hands steady as she cleaned the wound, her voice calm as she reassured the frightened man. She was good at this, natural, and Cole felt a surge of pride he had no right to feel. You could be a doctor, he said afterward. That's the plan. Medical school in London, if I can get the grades and the funding. I could help. I have money saved. I don't want your money. The words were sharp, final. I'll earn it myself. Because taking help from me would mean forgiving me. Because taking help from you would mean I needed you. And I've survived 17 years without needing you. I'm not starting now. The rejection stung, but Cole understood it. Sarah was protecting herself, maintaining the walls that had kept her safe during his absence. He couldn't blame her for that. On the third day, they rode out from the mission with Kipchoge, who'd returned with news about the surrounding territories. Sarah proved to be a natural rider, fearless and competent, adapting quickly to the African landscape. They stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the Great Rift Valley, the vast expanse stretching to the horizon in layers of blue and gold. Cole pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the land, the people, the rhythms of life out here. Do you love it? Sarah asked suddenly. This place, this life? Is that why you stayed? Cole thought carefully before answering. I love what it taught me. About survival, about myself, about the cost of running away. But love? No. Africa's too honest for love. It takes what it wants and gives nothing back except the truth. And what truth did it give you? That I was a coward. That leaving you and your mother wasn't about adventure or necessity. It was about fear, fear that I'd fail as a father, that I wasn't good enough, that staying would mean facing my own inadequacy every single day. Sarah was quiet for a long time, staring out at the valley. Mother said you were brave, that it took courage to do what you did out here. She was being kind. Bravery is staying when everything in you wants to run. What I did was just running with a rifle. And now? Are you still running? No, now I'm standing still, letting consequences catch up with me. Turns out that's harder than running ever was. That night, their last night before the British returned, Sarah came to Cole's small room in the mission. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted by lamplight from the hall, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had all week. "I can't call you father," she said without preamble. "That word means something, and you haven't earned it. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I understand. But I don't want to call you Mr. Mercer either. That's too formal for someone who's supposed to be family, even broken family. What do you want to call me?" "Cole? Just Cole. That way we can start fresh without the weight of what father means." Cole nodded, throat tight. "Cole works." Sarah stepped into the room, holding something in her hands, a small photograph, worn and faded. She handed it to him. It showed a young woman holding a baby, both smiling at the camera. Sarah's mother and infant Sarah, taken before Cole had left. "Mother wanted you to have this. She told me that if I ever found you, if you were still alive, I should give it to you. She said you carried a lot of guilt, but maybe you also deserve to carry a little love." Cole took the photograph with shaking hands, staring at faces he barely remembered but had never forgotten. "Thank you." "I'm not ready to forgive you," Sarah continued, "and I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But Evelyn was right. You tried to be better. You made choices that weren't about yourself. That counts for something. What happens after tomorrow, after the British take me?" "I don't know. Evelyn and I are staying in Africa for a while. She has research to finish, and Dr. McLeod says he can use help at the clinic. Maybe I'll visit you wherever they put you. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll go back to London and try to forget this whole impossible trip. Whatever you decide, I'll understand. Will you? Or will you write me letters I won't read, spend years hoping for something I can't give you? No. If you leave, I'll respect that. I've taken enough from you. I won't take your peace too." Sarah studied him one more time, searching for deception or false promises. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she crossed the room and, briefly, awkwardly, hugged him. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, a tentative embrace that felt nothing like the father-daughter reunion Cole had imagined. But it was real, and it was offered freely, and it was more than he dreamed possible. "Good night, Cole," Sarah said, pulling away. "Good night, Sarah." She left, and Cole sat alone with the photograph, with the weight of what had been and what might never be. Tomorrow, the British would come. He'd surrender as promised, face whatever trial awaited him. But tonight, he had this, proof that his daughter had grown into someone remarkable, someone strong enough to travel across the world to confront her past, brave enough to offer connection without promises. Whatever happened next, he'd done what he came to do. He'd shown Sarah that the man Evelyn described was real, that change was possible, that some sins could be acknowledged even if they couldn't be forgiven. Morning came too quickly. Lieutenant Thornton arrived exactly on schedule, 6 soldiers at his back, a military wagon waiting to transport Cole to Nairobi. The young officer looked almost apologetic as he produced the arrest warrant. "Time's up, Mr. Mercer. Are you ready?" "As I'll ever be." Sarah and Evelyn stood together watching as Cole gathered his few possessions. He didn't have much. The clothes on his back, his rifle, which Thornton allowed him to give to Kipchoge, and the photograph Sarah had given him, which he tucked safely in his shirt pocket. "What will happen to him?" Sarah asked Thornton. "Trial in Nairobi. If he cooperates, probably deportation back to America. If he doesn't," Thornton left the alternative unspoken. "He'll cooperate," Evelyn said with certainty. "He gave his word." Cole shook hands with Dr. McLeod, thanking him for the hospitality. He clasped forearms with Kipchoge and the Maasai tradition, the warrior gripping hard enough to convey respect. Then he turned to Sarah and Evelyn. Evelyn hugged him without reservation, whispering, "Thank you for not running," in his ear. Sarah stood apart, formal, maintaining her careful distance, but she met his eyes and said, I'll think about visiting. No promises. No promises, Cole agreed. Just know that wherever I end up, whatever happens, I'll be there if you need me. That's what fathers say. It's what this father means. Thornton cleared his throat gently, apologetically. We need to go. Cole climbed into the wagon, his hands bound loosely in front of him, a formality more than a necessity. As they pulled away from the mission, he looked back one more time. Sarah stood watching, one hand raised in a gesture that might have been goodbye or might have been something else. Beside her, Evelyn had an arm around the younger woman's shoulders, offering support for whatever emotions were running through her. The wagon rattled toward Nairobi and whatever justice waited there. Cole sat quietly, watching the African landscape roll past, feeling lighter than he had in 17 years. He'd made his choice. Not treasure, not escape, not the easy path. People. Connection. Truth. He'd chosen to face consequences instead of running from them, to stand still and let himself be found. The frontier had tested him one final time, and for once, Cole Mercer hadn't failed. The jail in Nairobi was a squat stone building that baked in the equatorial sun, its cells designed more for intimidation than comfort. Cole spent 3 weeks there waiting for trial, sharing a cramped space with petty thieves and drunks who cycled through with depressing regularity. The guards treated him with wary respect. Word had spread about the American tracker who'd surrendered voluntarily, and that kind of behavior confused men used to dealing with runners and fighters. Lieutenant Thornton visited twice during those weeks, bringing books and news from the outside world. On his second visit, he sat across from Cole in the visiting room and spoke quietly. Your trial's been scheduled, 2 weeks from today. The prosecutor is pushing for a 5-year sentence, destruction of government property, interference with military operations, that sort of thing. Could be worse, Cole said. Could be better. There are people who want to make an example of you, show what happens when civilians interfere with colonial interests. Thornton leaned forward. But there are also people arguing the other side. Dr. Cross submitted a lengthy deposition from England, detailing how you prevented a potential international incident. Miss Cross and your daughter have been lobbying anyone who'll listen. That surprised Cole. Sarah's involved? She's been relentless, actually. Shows up at the colonial office every other day, demanding to speak with officials, presenting evidence that you acted to prevent war rather than commit crimes. Thornton smiled slightly. She has your stubbornness, that's for certain, and she's making people uncomfortable, which means they're listening. I told her not to make promises. She's not making promises. She's making noise. There's a difference. The trial began on a Wednesday in late September, the courtroom packed with curious onlookers, journalists, and various officials who had stakes in the outcome. Cole sat in the defendant's box wearing his cleanest clothes, his hands folded calmly despite the knots in his stomach. Patricia Chambers was everything Thornton had promised, a British woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd visited Cole extensively in jail, taking copious notes, building a defense that she claimed would expose the hypocrisy of the entire colonial enterprise. The prosecutor, a pompous man named Edmund Whitmore, laid out the charges with theatrical precision: destruction of historically significant sites, interference with authorized military operations, conspiracy with foreign nationals to undermine British strategic interests. The defendant, Whitmore proclaimed, willfully destroyed an archive of immeasurable value, denying His Majesty's government access to knowledge that rightfully belonged to the British people. Patricia's opening statement cut through Whitmore's rhetoric like a knife. What my colleague calls theft, I call prevention of catastrophe. The archive in question contained metallurgical secrets that would have triggered an arms race across Africa and beyond. My client didn't destroy British property. He destroyed a weapon aimed at the heart of global stability. The trial lasted 6 days. Colonel Ashford testified reluctantly, admitting under cross-examination that his orders had included securing strategic assets by any means necessary. William Cross provided scholarly context about the archive's contents and the international interests competing for access. David Omondi described his kidnapping and captivity, making clear that multiple governments had been willing to torture and kill for the archive's secrets. On the 4th day, Evelyn took the stand, describing Cole's repeated choices to protect rather than profit, to sacrifice rather than exploit. Mr. Mercer could have sold the map a dozen times over, Evelyn testified. He refused every offer. When the moment came to choose between personal gain and preventing bloodshed, he chose prevention. That's not criminality. That's heroism. On the fifth day, Sarah testified. Cole hadn't known she would. Patricia had kept it from him. Sarah walked to the stand wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back, looking young but determined. Whitmore made the mistake of treating her dismissively. "Miss Mercer, you barely know your father. How can you speak to his character?" "You're right, I barely know him," Sarah replied. "Because he abandoned me when I was 6 months old and spent 17 years chasing adventures instead of being a father. I should hate him. I have every reason to hate him." Cole felt the words like physical blows. "But here's what I've learned," Sarah continued. "People can change. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. The man who left my mother wasn't capable of sacrifice. The man who stayed behind in that collapsing cave to give strangers time to escape, that man learned something in the years between." "So you're asking this court for leniency?" "I'm asking this court to recognize that punishing someone for preventing a war seems absurd. My father did your dirty work for you. He made sure no one got weapons that could kill thousands. You should be thanking him, not prosecuting him." The courtroom erupted. Judge Pemberton hammered his gavel, calling for order. Patricia rested the defense on the morning of the 6th day. The judge called a recess to consider the evidence. Cole spent the lunch break unable to eat, replaying Sarah's testimony. She defended him not because she forgave him, but because it was right. That meant more than forgiveness ever could. The court reconvened at 2 o'clock. Judge Pemberton's expression was stern as he began his ruling. "This has been an unusual case. The charges are serious, but the context is extraordinary. The court has heard testimony describing government operations that should never have been authorized. Villages burned, civilians killed, our archaeological sites militarized, all in pursuit of weapons technology that would have destabilized the entire region." Pemberton paused, letting his words settle. Mr. Mercer's actions, while technically criminal, prevented what multiple expert witnesses have described as an inevitable international conflict. However, the law is clear. Civilians cannot take it upon themselves to make strategic decisions that belong to governments. Cole braced himself. "Cole Mercer, please stand." Cole rose, Patricia beside him. "On the charge of destruction of government property, I find you guilty. On the charge of interference with military operations, I find you guilty. On the charge of conspiracy with foreign nationals, I find the evidence insufficient and dismiss that charge." Pemberton looked directly at Cole. "For sentencing, the court has considered the extensive testimony regarding your motivations and the broader context of your actions. Your actions prevented war. They saved lives. Therefore, the court sentences you to time served, 3 weeks in custody, plus 10 years mandatory exile from all British territories in Africa. You will be deported to the United States within 30 days. Cole felt relief wash through him. Time served. He was free. Additionally, Pemberton continued, the court orders the British Colonial Office to conduct a full review of the military operations surrounding the Msika-Wamawe site. Those responsible should face appropriate consequences. The courtroom exploded with noise. Patricia gripped Cole's arm, smiling. "That's as close to vindication as you're going to get." Sarah visited 2 days after the verdict, bringing Evelyn with her. They sat across from him in the visiting room, and for the first time, Sarah looked at him without walls up. "That was quite a sentence you gave from the stand," Cole said. "I meant every word. The colonial system is broken, and someone needed to say it publicly." "You made the prosecutor look like a fool." "He made himself look like a fool. I just helped clarify things." Sarah leaned forward. "So 10 years exile. What will you do?" "Go back to Boston, I suppose." "Find work. Build a life that doesn't involve running from my past." "That sounds terrifyingly boring." "Good. I could use boring." They talked for another hour about practical matters. Cole signing papers giving Sarah access to his savings, arranging for his possessions to be shipped to Boston, promising to write actual letters that he'd actually mail. "I'm staying in Africa for a while," Sarah said. "Dr. McLeod offered me an apprenticeship at the mission clinic. It's too good an opportunity to pass up." "That's amazing, Sarah. You'll be brilliant at it." "I know." She said it without arrogance, just confidence. "But here's the thing. I'll be here for at least 2 years. You'll be in Boston. That's a lot of distance. I'm familiar with distance. Well, don't create more. This time, stay put. Let me know where you are, what you're doing. Write letters that don't just talk about guilt and redemption. Tell me about your actual life. Cole felt hope flooding in. You want me to stay in touch? I want to see if the man you're trying to be is someone I can actually know. That takes time, and it takes honesty, and it takes you not disappearing. Sarah's expression was serious. Can you do that? Yes, I can do that. Good. Because I'm not ready to call you father, and I don't know if I ever will be. But maybe we can figure out what we are to each other if we both stop running. The 30 days passed slowly. Cole was transferred to minimum security, allowed to receive visitors without restriction. Kipchoge came by, bringing Cole's old rifle wrapped in leather. Lieutenant Thornton visited on the final day, bringing deportation papers and a letter from Colonel Ashford. Cole read Ashford's letter in private. Mr. Mercer, the investigation Judge Pemberton ordered has resulted in significant changes. 3 officers have been court-martialed. New protocols require civilian oversight for archaeological sites. You were right to destroy that archive. The empire is dying, though it will take decades. Men like you are hastening that end. History will thank you. Colonel James Ashford. The ship to Boston departed on a gray morning. Cole stood at the rail as Africa receded, 17 years collapsing into memory. The land had tested him, broken him, and finally taught him what it meant to choose something other than himself. Boston was cold and gray when he arrived, autumn rain falling steadily. Cole found a cheap boarding house, then work at the harbor. The city felt claustrophobic after Africa's vast silences, but slowly he began to adapt. He wrote to Sarah weekly, keeping his promise. The letters started awkwardly but grew more honest as weeks became months. Sarah wrote back regularly, describing her medical work, her growing confidence, her transformation into someone who saved lives. 6 months after returning, Cole received a letter from Evelyn. The Colonial Office investigation concluded. 3 officers were dishonorably discharged. New regulations have been implemented. My father has been appointed to an oversight committee. Sarah writes to me regularly. I can tell she's softening toward you. Keep showing up in those letters. Evelyn. Winter came brutal and unforgiving. Cole bought a heavy coat, learned to navigate ice and snow, discovered he liked the seasons. On Christmas Eve, working late at the docks, he received a telegram from Africa. Stop writing like you're dead. Stop, your letters are boring. Stop. Tell me about your actual life. Stop, what do you want, not just what you deserve. Stop, Sarah. Cole laughed so hard his coworkers thought he'd lost his mind. He wrote back that night, a different kind of letter. He told her about the nightmares, yes, but also about small victories. The first week he slept through the night, the day he stopped reaching for weapons that weren't there. He told her about wanting to be a father, even if she never called him that, about hoping that someday she might visit Boston, about understanding that earning her trust would take years, maybe forever, and being willing to put in that time. Sarah's response came 6 weeks later with a photograph showing her at the mission clinic, surrounded by local children, her smile genuine and unguarded. The letter was 8 pages long, describing her work, her dreams, her growing confidence. On the final page, I'm not ready to visit Boston yet, maybe not for years, but I want you to know that I'm glad you're there, that you're building something instead of destroying it. I won't call you father, but I'm starting to think of you as Cole, my Cole, someone who belongs in my life even if I'm not sure exactly where. Is that enough for now? Sarah. Cole read that page until the words blurred. It was enough. It was more than enough. Spring arrived. Cole celebrated his 43rd birthday alone, marking the occasion with a letter to Sarah. The next day, Lieutenant Thornton appeared at his boarding house with news. The Colonial Office sent me to deliver this personally. He handed Cole an official document. By order of His Majesty's Colonial Office, the exile of Cole Mercer is hereby reduced from 10 years to 5 years. Furthermore, Mr. Mercer is granted special dispensation to visit said territories for periods not exceeding 30 days annually. Cole stared at the document. I can visit? 30 days a year. Colonel Ashford pushed for this, along with Dr. Cross and several others. Not much, but enough to see your daughter. 5 years instead of 10. The possibility of visits, of seeing Sarah in her element. of proving through presence rather than letters that he was serious. The years that followed established a pattern. Cole worked the docks, saved money, wrote letters. Sarah responded with increasing frequency, her letters growing warmer if not quite warm. In his second year back, Cole enrolled in night classes studying tropical medicine and public health. If he was going to visit Sarah's world, he wanted to be useful. In year 3, Evelyn visited Boston. They met for dinner near the harbor, and she looked different, polished, professional, having completed her doctorate. "You look good," she observed. "More settled than I've ever seen you." Boston agrees with me. Or maybe I finally stopped fighting. Sarah writes to me too. She mentions you more than she probably realizes. You're becoming part of her thinking. In year 4 came unexpected news. The mission clinic burned down. Sarah's letter described the disaster, and Cole immediately wanted to wire money. But Sarah's response was sharp. "I don't want your money. If you want to help, help properly. Research organizations that support medical missions. Connect us with the right people." Cole spent weeks doing exactly that, learning about nonprofit organizations, facilitating introductions. 6 months later, Sarah wrote, "The new clinic opens next month. It's twice the size. Dr. McLeod says to thank you. I say you actually listened to what I needed instead of assuming. That's progress." In year 5, as summer turned to fall and Cole's exile approached its end, he received the letter he'd been hoping for and dreading. "My work here is nearly done. I've trained local staff, established sustainable systems. The clinic belongs to the community now. I'm coming to Boston in September. Not to stay, but to visit. To see what you've built. This isn't forgiveness, Cole. This is investigation. Be ready. Sarah." Cole had 3 months to prepare. He moved from the boarding house to a small apartment, nothing fancy but clean and his own. He researched everything happening in Boston, planning options without assuming preferences. September arrived cool and clear. Cole stood at the dock watching the passenger ship pull in, scanning for a familiar face. And there she was, 23 now, confident, purposeful. Their eyes met across the distance. She walked down the gangway, stopping 3 feet away with her bag between them like a barrier. "You look different," Sarah said. "Less dangerous." "Boston will do that. Or maybe just exhaustion from trying to be better." "Are you? Better?" "You'll have to tell me. I'm not objective." Sarah studied him, then smiled slightly. "Fair answer." She stayed 3 months touring hospitals, attending lectures, observing. They fell into a rhythm, mornings walking while Cole answered her questions, afternoons while she worked, evenings sharing meals and conversation. Sarah watched him constantly, testing everything he said against his actions. 1 month in, Sarah asked about the nightmares. "I hear you sometimes at night, waking up, pacing." Cole didn't deny it. "They're better. Used to be every night. Now maybe twice a week." "What are they about?" "Different things. The archive collapsing, people I couldn't save. Your mother's face the day I left." "Do you regret leaving? Actually regret it?" Cole thought carefully. "I regret what my leaving cost you and your mother. I don't regret where the journey eventually led, but the cost was too high. If I could go back, I'd stay. I'd be poor and frustrated and probably miserable, but I'd stay." "Why?" "Because being present for the mundane is harder and more important than chasing the extraordinary." Sarah was quiet. Then, "I think that's the most honest thing you've ever said to me." As her visit neared its end, they sat in Cole's apartment making plans. "I'm staying in Boston for a hospital program," Sarah said. 18 months, specializing in tropical medicine. After that, I don't know." "And us, what are we?" Sarah considered carefully. "I think we're becoming something new. Not father and daughter in the traditional sense. We missed that window. But maybe colleagues? People who respect each other, share values, can work together? I can live with that. Can you? Because I need to know you're not holding out hope for some dramatic reconciliation. I stopped hoping for that years ago. Now I just hope you'll keep me in your life in whatever capacity works." "Good. Because that's all I can offer." The 18 months of Sarah's program passed steadily. She excelled, as Cole knew she would. They settled into a comfortable routine, not living together but nearby, sharing weekly dinners, collaborating on research about integrating traditional African medicine with Western practices. When the program ended, Sarah was offered positions at 3 hospitals. She turned them all down. I'm going back to Africa, not to the old clinic, but to start something new. A training hospital that will teach African doctors using African methods alongside Western ones. That's ambitious. It's necessary. Where will you be based? Kenya, near Lake Victoria. Cole felt the ache of distance, but also pride. I'll visit when I can. 30 days a year isn't much, but it's something. Sarah looked at him seriously. I've been thinking about what we are to each other. You're not my father, you lost that right. But your family. Someone I trust, someone I rely on. Is that enough? Cole felt tears threatening. It's more than I ever imagined. Good, because I need family for this next phase. People who understand what I'm trying to do. I can do that. I know, that's why I'm asking. The night before she left, they sat in Cole's apartment one final time. Sarah pulled out a photograph of herself at the hospital. For you, so you remember what you're supporting. Cole placed it beside the photo of infant Sarah and her mother, creating a timeline of loss and recovery. I have something for you too. He pulled out a leather journal. Notes on everything I learned in Africa, tracking, water sources, cultural protocols, things that might be useful for establishing a hospital in remote areas. Sarah flipped through it, eyes widening. This is incredibly valuable. It's my life's work, the part's worth preserving. I want you to have it. Cole, this is the closest thing you have to a legacy. You're my legacy. Everything else is just preparation for helping you succeed. Sarah stood abruptly, walking to the window, shoulders tight. When she turned back, her eyes were wet. I can't call you father. I've tried, but the word won't come. Too much history. I know. But when people ask who you are, I tell them you're family. Someone who was lost and got found. Someone who made terrible mistakes but spent years making better choices. Someone I'm proud to know. That's enough, Sarah. That's more than enough. They stood across the room from each other, years of distance suddenly feeling unnecessary. Sarah crossed the space and hugged him properly, holding on. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up, for becoming someone worth knowing. Sarah left for Africa the next morning. Cole stood at the dock watching her ship pull away, feeling simultaneously the pain of separation and the peace of knowing she'd returned to his life. In her time, on her terms. He returned to his apartment that evening and began writing the first letter of what would become decades of correspondence. Not seeking forgiveness, not asking for more than Sarah could give, but staying present, staying engaged, proving through consistency that he meant every promise. The frontier had taught him to survive. Boston had taught him to live. But Sarah had taught him what mattered most, that being worthy of being called family wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up, day after day, year after year. It was about choosing people over treasure, sacrifice over safety, truth over comfort. Cole Mercer would never be the father Sarah deserved when she was 6 months old. But he could be the family she needed now. Reliable, honest, supportive without being intrusive. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined 17 years ago, but it was better than anything he'd earned and more than he'd hoped for. He'd made his choice, not treasure, not escape, people, connection. The slow, difficult work of becoming someone worth knowing. The frontier had finally released him, taking everything, his youth, his certainty, his illusions. In return, it had given him something more valuable than any archive could contain. It had given him truth. And truth, however brutal, was what finally set him free. Outside his window, Boston hummed with evening life. Ships came and went in the harbor. Somewhere across that ocean, Sarah was beginning her next chapter, building something that would outlast them both. And here, in a small apartment filled with letters and maps and photographs, Cole Mercer settled in for the long work of being family. It was enough. It was everything. Sonnet 4.5.